Story 1. I'm a 27-year-old woman and, up until recently, I still lived at home with my parents. It was not by choice. If it were up to me, I would have been out of there years ago. But every time I tried to save money and make a plan, they found a way to keep me stuck. They controlled everything, my money, my time, my personal space. I had to be strategic if I wanted to escape. I had a full-time job, but it never felt like my money. My parents insisted that I contribute most of my paycheck to family expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, except I never saw any of the bills. The numbers never added up. I'd give them almost everything and they'd still complain about how we were barely making it. Meanwhile, my dad always had a new gadget and my mom constantly went shopping. When I asked where all the money was going, I got the same response. You don't need to worry about that, just your part. Privacy didn't exist. My mom would go through my room when I wasn't home. If she found anything she didn't like, a book, a gift from a friend, even receipts, she'd confront me about it. My phone wasn't my phone. They made me share my passcode in case of emergencies, but they used it to go through my texts, check my call log, and scroll through my social media. My dad once printed out my bank statements and highlighted suspicious purchases. He called me into the living room, waved the papers in my face, and demanded to know why I spent money at a coffee shop when I was supposed to be saving. This was my life. Every move monitored, every decision questioned. But I had a plan. For the past 6 months, I had been secretly looking for an apartment. I found one that was small but perfect. The rent was reasonable and, best of all, it was mine. I signed a lease without telling them. I started slowly moving my things out. A few books here, some clothes there. If they noticed, they didn't say anything. My older brother, who moved out years ago and had gone no contact for a while, warned me. They're going to lose their minds when they find out. I believed him, but I wasn't prepared for how bad it would get. They found out before I had a chance to tell them. They went through my desk, found my lease agreement, and confronted me the second I walked through the door. My mom was crying. My dad was furious. How could you do this after everything we've done for you? They made it sound like I was abandoning them. My mom clutched her chest dramatically, saying she couldn't handle the stress. My dad started listing off everything they had sacrificed for me. It wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush. I told them I was moving out no matter what. That's when the manipulation hit a new level. Suddenly, my mom had a serious health condition that she conveniently never mentioned before. She needed my help. She couldn't survive without me. I wanted to believe her, but when I texted my brother about it, he immediately called me. She's lying, he said. She pulled the same stunt when I left. I told them I wasn't changing my mind. That's when my dad called my job without my knowledge and told them I would be taking time off to help with a family emergency. I only found out because my boss pulled me aside, confused, asking if everything was okay. I was livid. They were trying to cut me off from everything. My money, my independence, even my job. That was the moment I knew I had to leave immediately. I packed my essentials while they were out. I had planned to do it slowly, but that was no longer an option. I had a friend on standby ready to help me move out in the middle of the night. When my parents came home and saw my half-empty room, they lost it. They staged a full intervention. They called extended family and made me sit in the living room while everyone lectured me about how selfish I was, how I was breaking my mother's heart, and how no good daughter would abandon her parents like this. But I didn't budge. They yelled, they cried, they called me ungrateful, a traitor, crazy. They said I was making a huge mistake, that I'd regret it, and that I needed them. I left at 2 a.m. with my friend. I didn't tell them where I was going. I didn't answer their calls. That first night in my apartment, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes. The place was quiet. No one was checking my phone, no one was monitoring my spending, no one was going through my stuff. For the first time in my life, I was free. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The first few days in my new apartment felt unreal. No one barging into my room, no one questioning my spending, no sudden family meetings to guilt-trip me. The silence was strange at first, but I got used to it fast. I started settling in, unpacking what little I had brought, buying groceries without someone monitoring my receipts, and just breathing. The apartment was small, but it was mine. Then the calls started, hundreds of them. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages, every single one from my parents. The first were demands, "Come home right now. We need to talk." Then came the guilt. "You're breaking your mother's heart. She can't sleep. She hasn't eaten." Then the anger. "You're ungrateful. You've been brainwashed." It didn't stop. Every hour, every day, my phone would buzz nonstop. I blocked their numbers. That's when the unknown numbers started calling. I blocked those too. The emails came next. I ignored everything. For the first time in my life, I had control over who could reach me. I thought they'd give up eventually. I underestimated them. They found me anyway. A few nights later, I heard knocking. Not a normal knock, but pounding over and over again. I looked through the peephole, my parents. They found my apartment. I didn't open the door. I didn't say a word. I just stood there hoping they'd leave. They didn't. The knocking got louder. My dad's voice boomed through the door. He told me to open up. My mom was crying. I stayed quiet. Minutes passed. They weren't leaving. They were trying to get in. The doorknob rattled. My dad pushed against the door, testing if it would budge. My heart pounded. I had locked everything, but the way they were pushing, like they expected me to give in, sent a chill through me. Then came the screaming. My mom wailed like she was in pain. She said she was having a heart attack. She begged me to open up just for a second so she could sit down. My dad banged the door again. My mom sobbed that she needed help. I didn't buy it. She had pulled this before. When my brother moved out, when she wanted me to stay home from work, when she needed to win an argument. Still, they wouldn't stop. After almost an hour of this, my neighbors came out. A few people peeked into the hallway, whispering to each other. I felt trapped. My own parents were causing a scene outside my home. I grabbed my phone and called the police. I stayed by the door, listening as my parents kept up the act. When the police finally arrived, I heard my mom's sobbing switch from dramatic to controlled. The second she saw the officers, she turned into a helpless, heartbroken mother. She told them she was just here because she was worried about me, but I had run away from home and cut off all contact. She painted herself as the victim. The officers knocked on my door. I took a deep breath and opened it. I explained everything. I was 27, I moved out on my own, and my parents were harassing me. I told them about the endless calls, the fake emergency, and how they had been banging on my door for nearly an hour. One of the officers turned to my parents and asked them to leave. My dad lost it. He yelled that I was being manipulated, that I wasn't thinking straight. My mom clutched her chest again, saying she just needed to see her daughter's face. The officers weren't having it. I was an adult. I was safe. I told them I didn't want my parents here, and that was enough. They were told to leave. They didn't go quietly. As they walked away, my dad shouted that I was a horrible daughter, that I was being controlled by someone. My mom sobbed that I had abandoned my family. I shut the door and locked it. The aftermath. My friends couldn't believe it when I told them what happened. They were horrified. One of them offered to stay over just in case. Another told me I needed to change my locks. That's when the Facebook posts started. My parents went public. They made a long, dramatic post about their ungrateful daughter who abandoned her sick mother and blocked her entire family. They painted me as heartless, reckless, and possibly brainwashed. The comments were flooded with support from family members, from their friends, from people I barely even knew. My inbox exploded with messages. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some demanded an explanation. Others told me I needed to apologize. A few just sent guilt-trippy paragraphs about family always sticking together. I ignored all of it. My brother was the only one who had my back. He told me this was exactly what happened when he left, that my parents were using the same playbook, and that I did the right thing. I started doubting myself. I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I should have at least talked to them. But then I remembered the door shaking, the screaming, the manipulation. No, I made the right choice. But I knew this wasn't over, not even close. I thought blocking their numbers and ignoring their Facebook meltdown would be enough to make them stop. I was wrong. Started small. I noticed I wasn't getting important mail. Bills, bank statements, even a new debit card I had ordered. At first, I thought it was just delays. Then I got an email notification about a credit card application I had never made. The address on the application? My parents. They were trying to open a credit card in my name. I immediately called the bank, reported it as fraud, and had them shut it down before anything went through. I froze my credit and put an alert on all my accounts. I thought that would be the end of it. Again, I underestimated them. A few days later, my boss called me into her office. She looked concerned. I had no idea why until she told me someone had emailed HR claiming I was mentally unstable, that I had run away from home and needed to be watched carefully. It was my dad. He had written a long, dramatic email warning them that I was in a bad mental state and that my family was worried for my safety. He even hinted that my employer should intervene. I sat there staring at my boss, trying to process it. I had to explain everything. That my parents were controlling, that I had moved out to escape them, and that this was another one of their desperate attempts to force me back. My boss listened, then nodded. She said HR was already skeptical because the email was weirdly aggressive, but she wanted to check with me before ignoring it. I was lucky my job had my back. But the fact that my parents were now trying to sabotage my career, that changed everything. I called my parents. I knew they would deny it, but I wanted them to hear me say it. I knew what they were doing. The second my mom picked up, she started crying. My dad took over, acting offended that I was accusing them of such things. They had no idea what I was talking about. Maybe I was confused. Maybe someone else was trying to steal my identity. Maybe my boss misunderstood the email. Lies on top of lies. I cut them off mid-sentence. I told them if they kept interfering in my life, I would press charges. Silence. Then the excuses started. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were just protecting me from making a mistake. They were only reaching out because they loved me. I hung up. The next day, they doubled down on their social media campaign. Now, I wasn't just an ungrateful daughter who abandoned her sick mother. I was brainwashed and mentally unstable. They made vague posts about how they were losing their daughter to outside influences and that they wouldn't stop fighting for her. Family members started calling me nonstop. My aunt left a voicemail saying I needed to go home and fix this before it was too late. A cousin messaged me telling me to at least talk to them and hear them out. I blocked every single one of them. I wasn't playing their game. I started researching restraining orders. I wasn't sure if their behavior qualified, but I needed to know my options. I also went to my bank and changed every security question and PIN. I added extra verification steps to utilities, insurance, my lease, even my phone provider. If they tried anything else, I wanted to be ready. Then I went to my apartment manager and asked if anyone had tried to access my mailbox. That's when I learned someone had been asking about my mail. A concerned family member had come by a few days earlier asking if they could pick it up for me. They didn't give the mail to them, but the fact that my parents had tried that sent a clear message. They weren't done. My boss reassured me that my job was safe. HR had dismissed my dad's email as nonsense. That was one win. But this was bigger than just controlling parents. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to ruin my life. They were trying to trap me, and I had no idea what they were going to do next. I was finally starting to feel like I had control over my life for the first time. I could wake up without fear of being monitored, without someone watching me, without having to justify every decision I made. Felt strange. Felt freeing. But deep down, there was still a part of me that carried the weight of everything that had happened. The separation hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. My brother supported me, and I held on to that every time guilt tried to creep in. Then one day my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I let it ring. A few moments later, a message appeared on my screen. It was from my mother. "I'm sick." I sighed. This wasn't the first time. Every time she wanted to pull me back, she made something up. When I decided to leave home, she said she wouldn't survive without me. When I stopped answering her calls, the desperate messages started. And now this. I ignored it, but she kept going. "Seriously, I'm not well. I need you. Then, you won't even ask what's wrong? And finally, the guilt trips. You really have no heart. I'm your mother. I rolled my eyes and silenced my notifications. Days passed. The messages continued. You're going to regret ignoring me. I'm getting worse. Only talk to me. I didn't believe her. Couldn't believe her. She had lied too many times before. She had used me too many times. If I gave in now, the cycle would never end. My brother called me. Did she text you? Yeah, saying she's sick. He sighed. Figured she'd try that on you too. Do you think it's true? I asked, more out of habit than doubt. No. And that was that. Case closed. Until one day much later, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. My aunt. I answered, expecting another attempt to guilt trip me. But what she said on the other end made my blood run cold. Your mother passed away. My heart pounded. What? No, that couldn't be true. The ground felt like it had disappeared beneath me. My phone almost slipped from my hand. What do you mean? My voice was shaky. She had been sick for months. We tried to tell you. My breath caught in my throat. My eyes burned. This wasn't real. But then more messages came. From relatives, from acquaintances, from people I barely remembered. Some were full of anger. You didn't even show up for your own mother's funeral. Others were soaked in guilt. She asked for you until the very end. My brother called. I answered immediately. Is it true? He didn't respond right away. Yes. My chest tightened. Did you know? He hesitated. I thought she was lying at first too. But when things got serious, she stopped talking to me. I only found out now. My heart sank. My mother was dead, and I had ignored her. My entire body trembled. My eyes filled with tears. All I could think about were the messages she sent. She was telling the truth, and I ignored her. My mind replayed every moment I saw her name on my screen and dismissed it. Every plea for help that I shrugged off as manipulation. Every chance I had to at least ask if it was real, and I chose not to. What if she really had been asking for me? What if she had been waiting for me to come? My breathing became uneven. My stomach turned. She died alone, and I did nothing. My phone kept buzzing, messages, calls, comments. My aunt sent me another message. She talked about you all the time. She kept asking if you would come back. It hit me like a punch to the gut. My legs felt weak. I sank to the floor, clutching my phone tightly. My brother sent another message. Don't listen to them. You didn't know. But I did know. I knew she had said she was sick. I just didn't want to believe her. She had played games with me so many times before, had tried to trap me so many times. But what if this time all she wanted was to have her daughter near her? What if this time she really needed me and I let her die alone? I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Because no matter how much my brother told me it wasn't my fault, deep down I knew it was. I could have done something. The days passed in a blur. The funeral happened. I didn't go. My brother went but said he didn't stay long. He told me it was quick, that he didn't want to give our family more room for drama. But my mother didn't leave quietly. She left a storm behind her. Social media was flooded with tributes, heart-wrenching messages, and, of course, attacks aimed at me. Ungrateful daughter. She died of a broken heart. I hope you can sleep at night knowing what you did. And the worst one. She waited for you until the very end. I blocked everything, but I couldn't block the guilt. My brother kept telling me not to torture myself. They always did this to us. You can't carry this weight alone. But how could I not? I had always wanted distance. I had always wanted freedom. But I never thought that freedom would come with a burden like this. What if my mother had been right about me? What if I was cold, selfish, heartless? For the first time, I didn't know if I had made the right choice. For the first time, my freedom felt like a punishment, not a victory. I had finally escaped their control, but now maybe it was too late to escape myself. After everything, I thought I would be able to move on. But the truth is, guilt doesn't go away that easily. It clings to you, seeps in, settles into every thought, every silence, every moment when I'm alone and ask myself, did I really need all of this? My mother's death became a spectacle, a show for everyone to watch. Relatives who never cared, who never asked if I was okay, suddenly became the judges of my life. I was the ungrateful one, the cruel one, the daughter who abandoned her own mother and let her die alone. And the worst part of me believed it. But did I have a choice? I think about everything that happened before. The years of control, the manipulation, the mind games, the time I spent living in a house that never felt like mine, that felt more like a prison. And when I finally managed to escape, they still tried to pull me back. They still tried to sabotage me, to ruin me. And now they wanted me to feel guilty, as if I was supposed to apologize for trying to live my own life. It was unbearable at first. I tried to deal with it. I tried to answer a few messages, tried to explain. But there was no room for explanations. People didn't want to hear my side of the story. They just wanted to attack me, to make me feel even worse. So I stopped. I cut off contact with everyone, blocked numbers, deleted social media, changed my email. I disappeared. And you know what happened? Silence. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I was tired, exhausted. What more could I have done? Was I supposed to run to the hospital the moment my mother sent that message after years of being manipulated? Was I supposed to believe her without question? And if I had shown up, would it have made a difference? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe she would have lived longer, or maybe she would have used it to trap me again. I'll never know. And that's what killed me. Because no matter what I do now, no matter how many times I tell myself that I did what was necessary, that I needed to walk away to survive, the doubt is always there. Did I do the right thing? Should I have given in? Should I have given her one more chance? And even if I had, would it have been enough? Because nothing was ever enough for her, for them. I spent my entire life trying to please them, trying to be the perfect daughter, trying to follow the rules, trying to give them everything I had. And still, it wasn't enough. It was never enough. And now, even in death, my mother still haunts me. I can't shake the feeling that no matter how hard I try, I'll never be completely free. But I need to be. I need to move forward, because I know that if I stay trapped in this, it's going to destroy me. So I chose my peace. I chose my freedom. I chose my sanity. I walked away from everyone, from my entire family, from anyone who could try to drag me back into that hole. And yet, when I'm alone, when everything is quiet, when I finally have space to breathe, the question comes back. Did I have to do all of this? Did I go too far? Am I really a terrible person? And if it were you in my place, if you had been controlled your entire life, if you had been treated like property, if you had fought just to have a place in the world without needing permission, would you have gone back? Would you have given in? Or would you have chosen your freedom too? Because I did. And now I have to live with it, maybe forever. Now on to the next story. Story 2. In the 7th year of our relationship, my fiancé posted a marriage certificate with another man. I looked at the photo and calmly told Laura that we were done. Her assistant, Felipe, called me, his voice filled with fake sobs. Mr. Mendez, it was just a joke. Laura's been under so much pressure at work. Please don't be mad at her. It's all my fault. In the background, I could hear Laura's voice dripping with a feigned concern she had never shown me. Felipe, darling, don't cry. There's no need to explain to him. Where's he going to go? He's just a kept man. I didn't say a word. I simply took off my engagement ring, grabbed my acceptance letter to grad school, and booked a flight out of the country. I turned off my phone and began packing my belongings. Laura didn't come home all night. She finally stumbled in the next morning reeking of alcohol. When she saw me on the couch, she barked, "Give me some coffee, black." I glanced up but kept packing. Laura's eyebrows shot up as she stomped over. "Carlos, are you deaf?" Then she saw my suitcase. Her face turned pale and then crimson. "What is this? Are you seriously breaking up with me?" I didn't look at her. "Is that a joke?" My calmness seemed to enrage her. Her eyes turned icy and she kicked my suitcase across the room. "Are you done with this little tantrum?" I looked up, a smirk tugging at my lips. "Tantrum? You're the one who married someone else." Laura rolled her eyes. "I told you it was a joke. Felipe is sick. He has cancer. He wanted to give his parents something, before. And he's been with me since he graduated, right? He's not just my assistant. He's my friend. I'm helping him. Is that so wrong? She gave me a condescending look. After all this is over, we can get married again. Happy now. I held up a hand. Save it. You have a husband. Talk to him. Laura's face hardened. You know what? You're just heartless. You don't trust me. Maybe we shouldn't get married after all. Her voice was dripping with a threat, but I didn't care. Fine by me. Laura blinked, stunned. You're serious? I didn't answer. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. As I passed her, she grabbed my wrist. Think about this, Carlos. You're nothing without me. I looked into the eyes of the woman I had loved for 7 years. All I saw was ice. It hurt more than I had expected. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and gently pried her fingers off my arm. Best of luck to you both. I walked out, pulling my suitcase behind me. I heard her scream, Carlos, don't you dare come crawling back. Let's see how a gold digger like you survives without me. A gold digger? I stopped and looked back, not because I regretted leaving, but to memorize the look of pure hatred on her face. As if to punctuate her anger, Laura slammed the door shut. The sound echoed through the hallway. Felipe was waiting by the curb. He had probably been there the whole time, eager to play the comforting lapdog after our fight. He rolled down the window and smirked. Well, if it isn't Mr. Mendez. What happened? Did Laura finally kick you to the curb? I shot him a cold stare and kept walking. He pulled his car forward, blocking my path. You should have left a long time ago, old man. You never deserved her. I stopped and looked at his smug face. I smiled. You're right. I didn't. Someone like you, a parasite who lives off her, is perfect for her. Felipe's face turned purple. I kicked him in the gut and kept walking. There's no need to be polite to trash. That night I checked into a hotel. Lying in bed, memories flooded back. Laura had been my everything, but she was an heiress to a fortune and I was just a nerdy graduate student. We had met in college, but she was always out of my league. Like every other guy, I had worshipped her from afar, trailing her to classes, meals, everywhere. I even changed majors just to be near her. Until today, I had never regretted that decision. It was how we finally got together. Laura picked me as her partner for a group project. I was so excited I could barely speak. I stammered. I. She laughed, her eyes sparkling. Sounds like you just proposed. Everyone else laughed too. I blushed, feeling like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But Laura just smiled and said, Don't tease him. Carlos is brilliant. I'm the lucky one. After that, we started dating. We were the perfect college couple. I was a star student with job offers from all the top tech companies. My professors urged me to go to grad school, but I turned them all down for Laura. I took an entry-level job at her family's company. She fought with her family to be with me. I still couldn't understand how we ended up here. We had both wanted the same thing, a stable future together. But after Felipe showed up, everything changed. He was younger, more energetic, more entertaining. Our conversations shifted. Instead of sharing our days, she talked endlessly about Felipe. At first I was jealous, angry. But after a few fights, seeing her dismissive attitude and hearing her accuse me of being petty, I knew her heart wasn't in it anymore. It wasn't Felipe that bothered me. It was Laura's indifference. Still, I proposed, hoping things would change after we got married. But that marriage license with her name and his shattered any remaining illusions. Looking out the hotel window, I felt a sense of peace. They say relationships have a 7-year itch. Maybe Laura and I had simply run our course. The next morning, I went to the office and resigned. It was a formality. My authority had been eroded for months. The HR director barely glanced at my resignation letter before approving it. Then she called me, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Such a shame, Mr. Mendez. We were all looking forward to your wedding. I wasn't fazed. Don't worry, I said with a smile. You'll be getting an invitation soon enough. I hung up. Before I could leave the building, Laura called. Carlos, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're supposed to be at the contract signing this morning. I held the phone away from my ear and waited for her to finish her tirade. Then I said calmly, "You seem to have forgotten something, Laura. I resigned yesterday. You approved it." "Carlos," she shrieked, "don't push me. I may have approved it, but you haven't finished the handover. I can sue you for breach of contract. I wasn't buying it." "Nice try. If you'd actually read my resignation, you'd know I completed all the necessary paperwork." I hung up. I didn't expect to see Laura again so soon, but I did. As I left the building with my suitcase, I felt a mix of relief and pain. 7 years of my life were left behind in that apartment, in that relationship. I had tried my best to be everything for Laura, adapting, sacrificing, accepting scraps of affection while she made me feel like I was lucky to be with her. But now it all felt so empty. I wanted to feel anger, but all that remained was exhaustion. As I turned the corner, I saw Felipe's car again. He was leaning against the door, looking at his phone with a smug smile. When he noticed me, he raised his eyes with that same air of superiority I despised. "Carlos, did you really walk out?" he said, letting out a short laugh. "I can't believe she finally got rid of you." I ignored him. He wasn't worth the energy. But before I could pass, he continued, You should know. She never really loved you. You were just convenient. She always said she liked keeping you around because you were too much of a leech to leave." That stung, not because I believed him, but because on some level it made sense. I stopped, took a deep breath, and stared at Felipe. "It's funny to hear that from you, Felipe. Someone who lives off her with nothing to offer but cheap flattery. If she thinks I'm a leech, what would she say about you?" His smug grin disappeared, replaced by a look of anger. Before he could respond, I kept going. She might have treated me like a burden, but at least I had the dignity to leave. You're stuck in this toxic mess, draining what you can because you know without her, you're nothing." I walked past him before he could reply. I got into a taxi and asked the driver to take me to the hotel where I'd stay for a few days while I sorted my life out. On the way, my mind lingered on Laura. Felipe's words echoed. Did she really see me as just convenient? Were the moments we shared just a facade to her? At the hotel, as I unpacked, a notification on my phone caught my attention. It was an email from the company. I thought it was just some bureaucratic matter about my resignation, but when I opened it, it was much more insidious. "We regret to inform you that due to your unexpected departure, certain projects assigned to you are being reviewed for potential errors or negligence. You are requested to report to clarify these matters. Failure to do so may result in legal action." It was obvious this was Laura's doing. She couldn't stand the idea of me leaving without consequences. She was trying to tarnish my name, maybe even ruin my career. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising frustration. I knew she was manipulative, but this was a new low. The next day, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I went to the office to address the so-called pending issues. When I arrived, the stares of pity and curiosity from colleagues were almost suffocating. But the icing on the cake was when Laura appeared, as impeccable as always, with a triumphant smile. "Carlos, what a surprise to see you here. I thought you decided to run away from your responsibilities," she said, her tone sweet and venomous. "I'm here to resolve any pending matters. But we both know this is just your way of trying to control me, Laura." Her smile faltered for a moment before she regained her composure. "Control? Don't be ridiculous. I'm just ensuring the company doesn't suffer from your abrupt departure." "Of course," I replied flatly. "As always, it's all about you, isn't it?" She narrowed her eyes, but before she could respond, Felipe entered the room. He looked visibly uncomfortable but tried to maintain his arrogant posture. He whispered something in Laura's ear and she looked ready to explode. Something was wrong. Before I could ask what was happening, the director of the company entered the room with a stern look. He held a tablet and handed it to Laura. "We received this morning. I think you and your assistant have some explaining to do." Laura took the tablet and visibly paled as she looked at the screen. Her expression shifted between shock and anger. My curiosity grew, but I kept my calm. Finally, the director turned the tablet toward me, revealing messages between Laura and Felipe discussing how to manipulate company documents to cover extravagant personal expenses. Laura, this is serious, the director continued. The board has already been informed and we've initiated a full audit. I suggest you contact a lawyer. Felipe began stammering, but Laura silenced him with a sharp look. She tried to regain control of the situation, but the damage was already done. I stood up, gathered my things, and turned to her before leaving. It seems you always thought you were in control, Laura. Maybe it's time to face reality. Good luck with that. I left the office without looking back. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine sense of relief. Whatever came next didn't matter. I was finally free of her. As I walked down the street, I received a message. It was from an old colleague offering help to start fresh in a new city. A new opportunity, a new life. I smiled, but deep down, I knew Laura wouldn't give up so easily. She still had cards to play, and this was just the beginning of what promised to be a final showdown. Days had passed since I last stepped foot in the company. I was determined to move forward, but the weight of what had happened still lingered. The exposure of Laura and Felipe's fraud had shaken the company and destroyed Laura's false sense of control over me. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder how this fallout would affect my own future. I sat in the small hotel room reviewing job offers from former colleagues when my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. Hesitant, I answered. Carlos, this is Mr. Moreira, the company's director. May I speak with you? I paused for a moment. My initial instinct was to hang up and leave the past behind, but something in his tone suggested this was important. Of course, Mr. Moreira. What would you like to discuss? I'd like you to come to my office. It's something we can't discuss over the phone. Reluctantly, I agreed, though my stomach churned with unease. Part of me was ready to confront the past, but another part feared what he might say. Arriving at the office, I noticed the atmosphere had shifted. There were curious, even respectful glances from colleagues as I walked down the halls. Somehow, I had become a symbol of something greater. When I entered Mr. Moreira's office, he greeted me with a firm handshake and a smile that seemed genuine. Carlos, first and foremost, let me say how deeply sorry I am for what you had to endure here. What Laura and Felipe did does not reflect the values of this company. Frankly, you didn't deserve any of it. I nodded cautiously, unsure of where this was heading. Thank you, Mr. Moreira, but I imagine you didn't call me here just to apologize. He chuckled lightly, nodding. You're right. I want to propose something. After conducting internal investigations, it's clear that many of the successful initiatives in this company were your ideas, not Laura's as she claimed. You were instrumental, even without receiving the credit you deserved. I was taken aback. I'd always known I contributed significantly, but hearing it directly from the director felt surreal. What exactly are you proposing? I asked, masking my apprehension. I want you to come back to the company, Carlos. Not as a subordinate, but as the director of projects. Laura's position is now vacant and, frankly, you're the most qualified person to fill it. I sat in silence for a moment, processing his words. Returning to that place after everything felt like an enormous leap. But it was also a chance to finally turn the tables once and for all. And what about the team? The damage caused by Laura? I asked, trying to gauge the situation. We're already addressing that. Laura and Felipe have been removed and are facing legal action. We want to rebuild trust, and we believe you can lead that effort. But, of course, the decision is yours. I studied Mr. Moreira, trying to assess his sincerity. Finally, I nodded. I'll accept, but on one condition. I want full autonomy to restructure the projects, choose my team, and ensure the company's culture changes. He smiled. Done. And so began a new chapter in my life. Returning to the company, now in a role with real power to implement change, was not easy. In the first few days, I faced skepticism from some and resistance from others still clinging to the old ways. But bit by bit, I began shaping the company in alignment with my values. My first decision was to bring in former colleagues I knew to be competent and ethical. I formed a team that shared my vision of integrity and innovation. Each meeting, each approved project, was a step toward cleansing the toxic legacy Laura and Felipe had left behind. Laura, however, did not take her downfall silently. I received notices from her lawyers, veiled threats, and even attempts at personal contact. She was desperate to regain the control she had lost. But I no longer had room for her in my life. Every move she made only reinforced my determination to keep moving forward. Months later, the company was unrecognizable. Revenue was up, employee morale was high, and we finally felt like we were working in a healthy environment. During a board meeting, Mr. Moreira made an announcement. "I'd like to congratulate Carlos for the exceptional work he's done as Director of Projects. Under his leadership, the company has not only recovered but exceeded all expectations. Therefore, I'm pleased to announce his promotion to Executive Vice President." Applause echoed through the room, and I allowed myself a smile. It wasn't just about the promotion. It was about the journey that had brought me to this moment. That evening, sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, I looked out at the city lights and reflected on everything. Laura had tried to destroy me, but in doing so, she had only given me the opportunity to rebuild myself in ways I never imagined. I was finally free, not just from her, but from the insecurities that had kept me tethered to the past. As I sipped the last of my wine, a message popped up on my phone. It was from Laura. "I hope you're happy. You've ruined my life." I stared at the screen for a moment, debating whether to respond. Finally, I deleted the message without typing a word. My victory didn't need to be explained. It was in the life I had built, the man I had become, and the future I could now truly call my own. Months into my role as Executive Vice President, the company was finally stable and thriving under my leadership. We had rebuilt trust with employees and the market. Yet, one unresolved matter kept lingering in my mind: Laura and Felipe. While they had been removed from the company, their actions had gone unpunished. Deep down, I knew I needed more than professional success to truly move on. I wanted justice. In one of my meetings with the board, I decided to raise the issue with Mr. Moreira. "Mr. Moreira, I know Laura and Felipe's actions caused serious damage to the company, but so far we've only addressed this internally. Don't you think it's time we formally report them to the authorities?" I asked, keeping my tone professional. He studied me for a moment, considering my proposal. "Carlos, you know this kind of action can be lengthy and complicated. Not to mention, it might bring negative attention to the company. Are you sure this is necessary?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "The transparency and integrity we're promoting can't just be words. If we allow them to go unpunished, we're sending the wrong message to our team and the public." He sighed, but eventually nodded. "Very well, but I want you to be prepared. If we decide to move forward, we'll need your testimony. Are you willing to do that?" I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, but my resolve outweighed any hesitation. "Yes, I'll do whatever it takes." A few weeks later, the formal complaint was filed. Laura was charged with corporate fraud and embezzlement, while Felipe was implicated as an accomplice. I still had doubts about Felipe's level of involvement. Perhaps he had been manipulated by Laura, just as I once had. But at that moment, my desire for justice, and perhaps a touch of vengeance, led me to testify against both of them in court. When it was my turn to speak, I looked directly at Laura. She sat next to Felipe, both of them trying to maintain a confident facade, but it was clear they were cornered. "Mr. Mendez," the prosecutor began, "can you describe the impact of Laura and Felipe's actions on the company?" I took a deep breath before answering. Their actions nearly destroyed the company's reputation. Entire projects were compromised, resources were diverted for personal luxuries, and employee morale plummeted. It was a time when we all doubted the integrity of the leadership, and it took months to repair. As I spoke, I saw Laura's face harden. Felipe, on the other hand, looked nervous, as though he wanted to say something but didn't have the courage. The prosecutor continued, "And do you believe both of them were aware of the wrongdoing?" "Yes," Laura was the mastermind behind it all, and Felipe played an active role as her accomplice. They worked together to cover up their actions, manipulating documents and deceiving the company's management. After my testimony, I left the courtroom with mixed emotions. Part of me felt guilty for including Felipe, as I wasn't entirely sure of his culpability. But another part of me knew that ensuring they both faced consequences was necessary to close this chapter of my life. Months later, the trial concluded. Laura was sentenced to several years in prison for corporate fraud, while Felipe received a lighter sentence for complicity but still faced time behind bars. The news was widely covered, and the company gained even more credibility for taking such decisive action against internal corruption. Meanwhile, my life was heading in the opposite direction. With the company thriving under my leadership, I was invited to speak at conferences, share my experiences, and even mentor young professionals. My days were filled with meaningful work and, for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. One evening, as I was working late in my home office, a notification popped up on my phone. It was an email from Felipe's lawyer. He wanted to meet with me before Felipe was transferred to prison. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. The next day, I went to the detention center where Felipe was being held. He looked different, more subdued, without the arrogance he used to display. When we sat down, he got straight to the point. "Carlos, I know you testified against me, and I'm not here to apologize. I just want you to know that while I made mistakes, not everything Laura said was true. Many times I only did what she told me because I was afraid of the consequences. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part was tired of excuses. Felipe, whatever the truth is, you made your choices. Now it's your responsibility to face them." He nodded, resigned, and I left, leaving the past where it belonged. Today, as I look at my life, I feel a profound sense of fulfillment. Not just because of professional success, but because I overcame the challenges and, most importantly, reclaimed my dignity. Laura and Felipe are now shadows of my past, while I continue to build a future full of opportunities. Sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset with a glass of wine in hand, I reflect on everything that has happened. My quest for justice may have started as a desire for revenge, but in the end, what truly mattered was the peace I found. Not only did I survive what they did to me, but I emerged stronger, more resilient, and finally truly free. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My friend with cancer wished for one final wedding, and to my shock, her chosen partner was my boyfriend. As I watched their grand ceremony unfold, I found myself seeking comfort in the arms of a stranger. He kept confirming, "Trina Barton, are you really willing to marry me?" Every few minutes, he'd message me to make sure. After I agreed, he sent me over a dozen diamond ring designs to choose from, each one more breathtaking than the last. "These are rings I bought at auction. Do you like any of them?" When I didn't reply right away, he messaged again a few seconds later. "If none of these suit your taste, there's a jewelry auction in the UK soon. I'll take you there to pick one yourself." After examining the rings carefully, I sent a voice message to Nathan. "The graph pink diamond looks beautiful. Let's choose that for our wedding ring." Just then, Ray appeared behind me. He overheard the words "wedding ring," and for once, his normally composed face showed a flash of panic. "Wedding ring? What wedding ring?" he asked, staring at me with an intensity that almost unsettled me. I met his gaze with indifference, ready to come up with an excuse, but just then my phone rang. It was my best friend, Elena Turner. I answered, and her tearful voice came through the line. "Trina, is Ray with you? I just had another nosebleed. I'm so scared." Before I could respond, Ray grabbed the phone from me. "Elena, don't worry. I'll be there right away," he assured her urgently. Then, without another word to me, he rushed out. I was left standing there, forgotten, as he ran to her side. Only then did I remember that he had asked me to join him for a night cruise on the Pearl River tonight. A plan he'd made to make up for missing our 10th anniversary. So this is what it feels like to finally let go of someone. Watching him run after another woman, My heart remains calm, untouched, as if nothing could stir it anymore. My phone rang again. This time it was Nathan. "Trina, are you ready? I'll pick you up in Boston tomorrow." Gazing into the distance, I replied softly, "Give me a week to settle things here. After that, I'll return to Seattle and we'll get married." His voice was warm on the other end. "All right, I'll be waiting for you. If anything comes up that you can't handle, remember I'm here." After we hung up, I called Grandpa Hall to say goodbye. He and my grandfather were comrades in arms and shared a deep bond. When I was 8, doctors diagnosed me with a severe heart condition. As luck would have it, the Hall family owned a renowned private hospital specializing in cardiology, so my grandfather decided to send me to them in Boston for treatment. Since then, Ray's parents have cared for me as their own, and Grandpa Hall has always looked after me with boundless kindness. As I prepared to return to Seattle, it felt only natural to say my goodbyes. Ray didn't come home again that night. A message from Elena appeared on my phone. "Look at you with cake all over your face. So cute." Attached was a photo of Ray leaning down to take a bite of cake, with Elena playfully smearing cream on his cheek. Moments later, she deleted the message. "I'm sorry, Trina. I sent it to the wrong person just now," she wrote again. Ray thought it was cute and asked me to send it to him. "You're not upset, right?" I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to my room and quietly began packing my things. The following day at noon, Ray finally came home carrying a gift he brought to apologize. "Trina, Elena's condition got serious last night. I just took her to the hospital," he said, watching me closely. I stayed silent as I opened the velvet box he offered. Inside was an elegant Van Cleef & Arpels watch, the straps circled in diamonds. Beautiful, extravagant, yet I remembered he had once given Elena a similar gift. Mine was simply the pricier version. Noticing my lack of response, Ray asked with a hint of worry, "Trina, are you upset?" I answered calmly, "No. Elena's unwell. You should be with her." He gave me a curious look, as if sensing something off about my response, but eventually just sighed. "I'm glad you're not angry," he said. "After all, we have a long future ahead of us together." "But Elena," his eyes glistened with emotion. I had no patience to hear more. "Then by all means, spend more time with her." With that, I turned to leave, but he caught my wrist, stopping me in my tracks. When I looked up, my expression was flat, my gaze emotionless. "What is it?" I asked. Ray looked mildly annoyed, though he didn't seem to know why. Before he could say more, his phone rang again. Glancing at the screen, he looked back up at me. "Trina, I'll be on a business trip for a few days. I won't be back for a while. You take care." I replied casually, thinking that his absence would make it easier for me to visit the Hall family and say my goodbyes. The next morning, I gathered the gifts I'd prepared and made my way to the Hall family home. When Mrs. Hall heard I was returning to Seattle, her eyes filled with concern. "Trina, what happened? You've settled so well here in Boston. Why leave so suddenly?" Mr. Hall, on the other hand, slammed the table in frustration. "And where is Ray? Why didn't he come with you? Did he mistreat you?" I hesitated, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them everything. "No, nothing like that. It's just that I've been away from home for so long. I'd like to go back and reconnect." Mrs. Hall looked at me with concern. "Does Ray know you're planning to go back?" To keep things simple, I nodded. "Yes, he knows." With that, everyone seemed to understand there was no convincing me to stay. After exchanging a few more words, I stood to leave. Just then, the front door swung open and there stood Ray, Elena beside him, her expression calm and assured. "Trina, what a surprise to see you here," she said with a smile, as if she were already a part of the Hall family. I held her gaze, my voice steady. "I don't need to explain to you why I'm here." With that, I brushed past Ray, heading for the door. Realizing I was leaving, Ray quickly followed, his voice urgent. "Trina, you've got this all wrong. I only brought Elena here so my parents could help her find a good doctor." He paused, as if trying to appeal to reason. "She's also your best friend, after all. You're not upset, are you?" I paused for a brief moment, his words fading as memories flooded back. His promise to me under the cherry tree when he was 18. He had said that marrying me was his lifelong dream. He once promised he'd bring me home to meet his parents as his future wife. But here he was, introducing another woman to the Hall family while telling me he was on a business trip. Seeing the anticipation in Ray's eyes, I replied calmly, "Why would I care? I've never been the type to hold grudges. People who aren't worth it don't deserve my concern." Ray looked momentarily taken aback. "Trina, do you really not care at all?" He was impossible to please. When he and Elena were close before, he called me narrow-minded for being upset. Now that I chose to ignore it, he still wasn't satisfied. I saw no point in explaining myself. Without another word, he leaned down and pecked me on the forehead. "Be good and wait for me at home," he said softly. As the elevator doors closed, I wiped my forehead. The gesture left me feeling sick. On our 10th anniversary, Ray had also dodged me with some excuse about a business trip. That night, I received a video call request from Elena. When the call connected, I could hear the lively sounds of a wedding celebration, and it slowly dawned on me. The wedding was Ray and Elena's. As the video call progressed, Elena's victorious grin dominated the screen. I realized I had to move quickly. After that last night in Boston, I felt truly free for the first time. It was as if all the promises, plans, and moments Ray and I had shared had dissolved into thin air, leaving me alone but with newfound clarity. There were no more excuses, no more attempts to salvage something that had long been broken. Nathan was waiting for me in Seattle, offering something I had never truly had. A chance to be genuinely loved without reservations or hidden agendas. I returned home that night with a heavy heart but a clear mind. I packed the rest of my things carefully, setting aside every object that once held sentimental value. Letters, small mementos from our trips, even the photo album Ray had made for our 2nd anniversary. All of it went into a box. I sealed it and left it by the apartment door. I wouldn't take anything from that life with me. The past would stay here, buried in that city and in that relationship that had never been real. But what hurt most was realizing how much time I had wasted on someone who had never truly seen me. The next morning, Ray showed up at the apartment early, unannounced, with that familiar expression, one I knew too well, the face of someone about to deliver a half-hearted excuse. He glanced at the box by the door, then looked at me with a smirk that bordered on mocking. "Going somewhere?" he asked, as if he didn't already know. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "I'm leaving, Ray. I'm going back to Seattle. Is there anything else I can do for you?" He looked shocked, but instead of trying to change my mind, his expression shifted to one of annoyance and superiority. "So that's it? You're giving up on us just like that, Trina? After everything we've been through?" I almost laughed. After everything we'd been through? I was the one who had endured each excuse, each absence, each lie. He, on the other hand, had just moved seamlessly from one lie to another without ever really living anything with depth. I looked at him, and at that moment, I saw the Ray I had never wanted to see. Selfish, manipulative, someone who liked the idea of having someone on standby but never truly committed to anyone. "You forgot me a long time ago, Ray. I was just the last to realize it." He opened his mouth to reply but hesitated, probably expecting me to back down, to change my mind as I had always done. I knew he believed I would never truly leave, but for once he was wrong. Ray tried one last attempt, appealing to our history together. He started talking about the promises, about how much we had meant to each other, but the words sounded hollow. He was speaking about us as if recounting a fictional story, devoid of any real emotion, without anything that could make me believe it. In the end, he gave up on pretending to be upset. Before leaving, he threw out one last line, something he probably thought would be a final blow. "I hope you know what you're doing, Trina. You're never going to find someone who understands you like I do." That's when I realized he truly understood nothing about me. All these years, he had only seen me as someone convenient who would always be there whenever he needed. But as I watched him walk out without a trace of remorse, I realized he had been gone for a long time. I had just been slow to notice. A few days later, I returned to Seattle. Nathan met me at the airport with that warm smile that already gave me a sense of peace I had never known. He held my hand firmly, as if he understood everything I had been through without needing an explanation. Nathan was patient, generous, and above all, he made me feel safe. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Weeks passed peacefully until one afternoon. While I was walking with Nathan through the city, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered hesitantly, and, to my surprise, it was Elena on the other end. She started with that soft voice, feigning kindness but masking her true intentions. She wanted to tell me that Ray was unhappy, that he felt lost without me. According to her, he still thought of me, filled with regret, and that he had only gotten involved with her impulsively out of compassion. She ended her speech begging, or rather imploring, for me to go back to him to reconsider. But each word she spoke only confirmed that I was finally free from that emotional prison. I took a deep breath and told her as calmly as I could that there was no turning back, that I had found someone who genuinely respected and valued me, someone who made me realize how foolish I had been for waiting so long to escape that toxic relationship. She didn't take it well, of course. She made one last desperate attempt to make me feel guilty, but nothing could shake me anymore. After that conversation, I decided to block any contact from Ray or Elena. They were now a closed chapter in my life, a part of the past I was finally willing to forget. Yet Ray wasn't ready to let go so easily. One day, I received a letter at home from his mother, Mrs. Hall, who had always been kind to me. She was asking me to reconsider, claiming Ray was truly remorseful and that his relationship with Elena had no future. But to me, it was too late for any apologies or pleas. I was determined not to return to that cycle of pain. I started focusing on myself, on my future with Nathan, on building something real, something worth my time. With every step, I felt like I was healing, rediscovering who I truly was. It was a slow process, but each day was a small victory over everything Ray and Elena had tried to take from me. I was at peace, and nothing, not Ray's false remorse nor Elena's desperate appeals, could make me give up my happiness. After months in Seattle, finally at peace with Nathan by my side, I believed the past was truly behind me. But one day, out of nowhere, I received a message from Ray. He wanted to talk, claiming he needed closure. I hesitated, but after weeks of persistence, I decided to put an end to it once and for all. We met in a discreet cafe, a neutral space with no ties to our shared past. I arrived first, and Ray walked in a few minutes later, looking visibly worn out. He seemed burdened, but to me it no longer mattered. He sat across from me and, after a long sigh, began with the predictable apologies. "Trina, I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you in ways I may never be able to fix." He hesitated, watching me for a reaction. I kept my expression cold, offering nothing. Desperation edged his voice as he continued. "Elena, she was lost. I was lost. She kept telling me she was sick, that she needed me, and now I've realized that maybe it was never true." Those words hung between us, and he waited, searching my face. A part of me had suspected as much. Of course, there was always something off about the way Elena's illness seemed to worsen or improve depending on what she needed from Ray. The cancer had been a convenient excuse, a tool she wielded to manipulate him. "So you finally figured it out, Ray?" My voice was low but steady. "She used you, used the disease as a weapon, and you let her. You chose to believe her without thinking about the consequences, or about what you were giving up." He lowered his head, clearly ashamed. I really thought she needed me. She told me it was life or death." His voice trailed off, sounding as though he was finally seeing things for what they were. "And did you ever think of me, Ray?" I asked, feeling a simmering anger that oddly now felt distant and almost irrelevant. "I was just an obstacle to you, something easy to discard. I stood by your side for years, but the moment she came along with her story, you threw everything away." He nodded slowly, taking in every word, each truth he had been avoiding until now. "I was a fool. I was naive. She always knew exactly what to say to keep me close." I looked at him with a cool indifference, observing the man I once knew, now lost and broken by his own weaknesses. Once upon a time, seeing him like this might have brought sadness or even pity. Now, it was merely a reminder of how far I had come. You made your choices, Ray, and now you have to live with them. My words were blunt yet honest. He needed to hear it, to understand that there was no excuse that could erase the past. He reached out as if to take my hand, but I pulled back. There was no place for contact, no attempt at salvaging something that could never be restored. Trina, he whispered, his voice thick. I know I can't change anything, but I don't know how to move on. For the first time I smiled, a real untroubled smile. It wasn't one of pity or empathy. It was one of liberation. I moved on, Ray. And as for you, that's no longer my concern. I finally found someone who knows what it means to love without manipulation. Someone who truly sees me. And you? Well, you'll have to live with the choices you made. I stood up, ready to leave that chapter behind once and for all. He remained there, motionless, with a look of loss and regret, unsure of what to do. In the days that followed, Ray tried reaching out again, sending me messages, calling occasionally, his attempts increasingly desperate. I ignored them all. Eventually, he stopped. Through mutual friends, I later heard that Ray and Elena had ended up together, but their relationship was plagued by jealousy and distrust. He discovered other lies of hers, and little by little, the illusion he had created unraveled. They said he was bitter, trapped in a relationship he had helped build, a situation that now consumed him. It was ironic how fate sometimes returns exactly what we sow. As for me, I moved forward, my heart at peace, knowing that my real revenge was choosing happiness. I was living something they could never understand. The freedom of being with someone who respected me, who saw the best of me. And knowing that Ray and Elena were ensnared in their own lies was, in a way, the perfect closure. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Andrew. I'm 34. And until recently, I thought I had finally carved out a life that stood on its own 2 feet. I wasn't trying to prove anything to my family. I just didn't want to live under their microscope anymore. So, I bought a modest house an hour away, started my own consulting business, and slowly distanced myself from the drama that always seemed to bubble up at every holiday gathering. It wasn't that I hated them, but after years of being treated like the ungrateful son or the difficult nephew, I just got tired of pretending everything was fine. When I moved out, it wasn't some dramatic announcement. No tears, no door slamming, just a quiet departure. I thought that would make things easier. I was wrong. For the first year or two after I left, invitations to family events came less frequently. Sometimes I'd find out about a cousin's wedding or a baby shower only after the pictures were posted on Facebook. Other times my mom would send me a vague, last-minute text like, "If you're free, brunch Sunday." No details, no warmth. It felt more like a formality than a genuine effort to include me. Still, I went to some of those events. I made polite conversation. I brought thoughtful gifts. But over time, the looks got colder, the whispers louder, and the jokes more pointed. They always made it seem like I had betrayed them by stepping away. Like choosing independence meant I thought I was better than them. But I never said that. I never said anything, really. I just wanted peace. I paid my share into the family trust, something my grandfather set up decades ago to help support relatives going through tough times. He'd built his fortune in construction and left a sizable chunk of it in a managed account. The idea was that everyone would chip in a bit each year and the fund would grow, ready to help if someone needed surgery, lost a job, or wanted to go back to school. I took that seriously. Even after moving out, I still made my annual contribution. No one ever thanked me. No one even acknowledged it, but I kept paying because it felt like the right thing to do. That brings me to this past Easter. My cousin Chelsea, one of the few people in the family I actually got along with, had messaged me the week before saying, "Hope you're coming to brunch. I told Aunt Lorraine to save you a seat next to me." I hesitated. I knew what it would be like. I'd walk in and feel the temperature in the room drop a few degrees. My mom would give me that tight-lipped smile, the one that said, "Don't make a scene." My Uncle Paul would probably make some joke about how I'd finally decided to show up. But Chelsea was worth it. She'd always been kind to me, always asked about my work, always made me feel like I wasn't some sort of black sheep. So, I showed up, dressed nice, brought a bottle of rose and a bouquet of flowers for Aunt Lorraine since she was hosting. The house looked the same as always. Big picture windows, floral centerpieces, and the faint smell of baked ham and cinnamon rolls. I stepped inside and immediately felt like I'd stepped back into a version of myself I tried to outgrow. People were mingling, laughing, passing around deviled eggs and little glasses of mimosa. And then I saw her, my Aunt Lorraine, standing near the dining table in some pastel cardigan, holding a tray of quiche like she was the queen of the county. She glanced at me, did a double take, and then walked over. Her eyes flicked down my outfit, then back up to my face, and she said it just loud enough for the nearby cousins to hear. "This table's for family only." I froze. At first, I thought maybe I'd misheard her, or maybe she was joking, but there was no humor in her voice, just that syrupy, sweet condescension I knew too well. I glanced at Chelsea, who looked horrified, then over at my mom, who was sitting at the far end of the table, sipping her mimosa with that same cold smile. "You made your choice when you moved out," my mom added, not even looking at me. I stood there, the bouquet still in my hand, the bottle of wine sweating in the other. For a moment, I actually laughed, just a soft, breathy chuckle. Not because it was funny, but because I was stunned. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash and realizing you were in the front seat. I didn't say a word, just turned around and walked out the way I came. I sat in my car for a bit, not crying, not angry, just numb. I thought about all the things I could say, all the comebacks I could throw at them. But I'd done that before. It never changed anything. So, I just sat there scrolling through my phone, trying to decide if I should go back to the city or just grab lunch at some quiet diner nearby. Then my phone buzzed. "Chelsea, I'm leaving." That was disgusting. Another buzz. Her husband. "We're with you. Give us a minute." I watched through the windshield as Chelsea stood up from the table, whispered something to her mom, and walked out. Her husband followed. A minute later, my cousin James, who just started his own business and once told me how much my financial advice had helped, stood up, too. Then 2 more cousins. By the time dessert hit the table, nearly half the seats were empty. I didn't plan what happened next. I didn't have some master revenge strategy ready to go. But in that moment, seeing who stood with me, and more importantly, who didn't, I knew something had to change. And I realized just how much of myself I'd been pouring into that trust fund every year. Quietly, dutifully, funding the same people who couldn't even save me a chair. I scrolled to my contacts, opened up the app one used to manage the contributions, and began typing an email. That was the moment everything started to shift. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. By the time I got back to my place that evening, I had 3 voicemails waiting. One from Chelsea, just checking in and telling me not to feel alone. One from my cousin Daniel, sounding hesitant, asking if we could chat sometime. And one from my mom. Her voice was flat, but every word was sharpened like a blade. "I don't know what kind of scene you thought you were making, Andrew. You embarrassed your family. This standoff of yours has gone on long enough. Grow up." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the Family Trust dashboard. Technically, I wasn't just a contributor. When my grandfather passed, he left a clause in his will stating that the first grandchild to reach financial independence without dipping into the fund would be given co-administrator privileges. At the time, everyone rolled their eyes and said it was a weird, old-fashioned requirement. But I got my business off the ground, paid off my loans, and qualified before anyone else. My mom said it was cute that Grandpa had put his faith in me. I never told anyone that he'd pulled me aside once when I was 24 and said, "That trust will save this family one day, but only if the right person is watching the vault." I always thought he meant the money. Now I think he meant the people. So I started combing through the logs. There were dozens of transactions. Some small, some eye-watering. Uncle Paul had taken out money 3 times for home repairs in the last year despite having a 6-figure income. My sister had withdrawn $8,000 labeled education, even though she hadn't taken a class since she dropped out of her yoga certification program 2 years ago. And Aunt Lorraine? Well, she'd apparently been reimbursed for a medical hardship that turned out to be liposuction from a spa clinic in Miami. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something colder. A kind of calm that came from watching a dam crack slowly over time and realizing it was about to burst. The next morning, I drafted a letter to the financial firm that handled oversight for the trust. I wasn't removing anyone, not yet, but I was placing a freeze on all withdrawals pending a full audit. I cited irregularities and requested a compliance review, the kind of bureaucratic move that looks harmless on the surface until the people used to freely dipping their fingers into the pot suddenly find the lid screwed on tight. The email went out at 9:42 a.m. At 10:17, my phone started buzzing again. Mom, decline. Uncle Paul, decline. Then a group text lit up. Did you lock the account? I can't access anything. What is going on? I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a private message to the firm. Please ensure any questions regarding the freeze are directed to me or my legal representative. I'll provide further instructions within the week. By lunch, Aunt Lorraine had sent an email addressed to the entire family with the subject line, "Inappropriate overstep." In it, she called me vindictive, unstable, and emotionally erratic. She CC'd half the cousins and included a thinly veiled threat about seeking legal advice. She even said, get this, that I had never truly been part of this family. I stared at that line for a long time. Never truly been part of this family. That was it, wasn't it? The root of all of it. I was always the different one. The one who didn't go to church every Sunday. The one who asked questions about the way things were run. The one who didn't laugh at their jokes when they made fun of Chelsea's husband for being vegetarian, or when they mocked Daniel for not acting like a man. I didn't conform. And instead of respecting that, they rejected it. But here's what they didn't know. The trust wasn't the only thing I had access to. Back when Grandpa was still alive, he and I would meet for breakfast once a month. He'd order the same thing, black coffee, eggs over medium, dry rye toast. We'd talk about business, about life, about family. One day, out of nowhere, he told me, the house they all love, the lake house, they don't know it, but I put it in your name quietly years ago. Taxes are handled through a shell company, and the paperwork's airtight. I wanted to make sure someone who earned it would own it. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. I pulled up the documents. Everything was there. Deed, transfer records, even a notarized letter from my grandfather explaining his choice. The house where we used to spend every summer. The one they'd started treating like a community clubhouse after he passed. Barbecues, birthdays, even a cousin's wedding reception last fall. They never once asked permission. They didn't have to. No one knew I owned it until now. I started drafting another email, not to the whole family, just to one person, my mom. I kept it short. Since I'm apparently not part of the family, I assume you won't mind if I exercise my legal right to enforce private ownership of the lake house. You'll find a formal notice of restricted access attached. Effective immediately, all scheduled events must be canceled. The locks will be changed Friday. Then I hit send. I leaned back, listening to the silence in my house. It was peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was defending myself. I wasn't reacting. I was acting. The phone started buzzing again. But this time, I let it ring because I knew the real fallout hadn't started yet. It took less than 12 hours for the family group chat to go into full meltdown. Chelsea texted me screenshots of the chaos. First, it was my mom posting in all caps, "Who do you think you are?" Then Uncle Paul chimed in with some half-baked legal threat about stealing family property. Aunt Lorraine followed it with, "Your grandfather would be ashamed." That one made me pause, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I'd always suspected. They had no idea who Grandpa really was. In the end, they clung to their curated image of him, the one that fit neatly into their polite dysfunction. They didn't know the man who sat across from me at breakfast and said, "Keep your head down, but keep your power close." I didn't respond. Not yet. The next morning, I received a voicemail from Daniel. His voice was low, unsure. "Hey man, I don't I don't know everything that's going on, but for what it's worth, I think they're freaking out because they're finally realizing you're the only one who ever had any real integrity. Let me know if you want to talk." That meant something, coming from him especially. Daniel had always been caught in the middle, too kind to stand up to his dad, too tired to push back on his mom. I didn't blame him, but I also wasn't going to shield him from the storm I was about to unleash. The first knock on the door came that afternoon. I wasn't surprised to see my mom standing there. She didn't even wait for me to invite her in. She brushed past me into the living room like it was still hers. "Andrew," she said, clutching her purse with both hands like it was keeping her grounded. "We need to talk." I didn't move. I just closed the door behind her and leaned against the frame. "What's there to talk about?" I asked, calm but firm. "This drama," she said, gesturing vaguely. "Locking the trust, kicking us out of the lake house. Do you even realize how this looks to the rest of the family?" "That's your concern?" I asked. "How it looks. You're acting like a spoiled child." I laughed once, just a breath of disbelief. "You excluded me from my own family. You let Aunt Lorraine humiliate me in front of everyone. And when I walked away, you called it a scene. Now you're here in my house demanding I keep funding the same people who treat me like a stranger. And I'm the one acting like a child." She didn't answer. She just looked at me like she wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't find the right words. "You told me I made my choice when I moved out," I continued, my voice quiet but steady. "Well, this is your choice now. You don't get to shame me and then ask me to foot the bill." Her lips tightened. I could see the tears forming, but I didn't move. "Not this time. Not again." "This isn't you," she said finally. "You're not cruel." "No," I agreed. "I'm not. But I am done being complicit." She left without another word. That night, Chelsea called me. "They're scrambling," she said. "Paul tried to schedule his daughter's graduation party at the lake house next weekend. Found out the hard way it's not available." I smirked. "Did he now?" And get this, Lorraine tried calling the property manager, acting like she was still the owner. She practically threatened him. He hung up on her. I chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because it was also predictable. Then she paused. "There's something else," she said. "They're planning a meeting at Grandma's place. They want to discuss options. Try to pressure you into walking it back. Uncle Paul said something about voting to remove you as trustee." I felt the fire rise up again, slow and steady. "They can try," I said, "but they won't like what happens next." The truth was, I'd been planning this part for weeks, ever since that Easter brunch. First, it had just been a thought. What if I stopped funding the dysfunction? But the more I dug into the paperwork, the more I realized just how much control I actually had. Grandpa hadn't just given me administrative privileges. He'd given me power of amendment, meaning I could revise parts of the trust if I saw fit to protect its long-term value. It wasn't a carte blanche, but it gave me room, and I'd already started working with a lawyer to redraw the bylaws. But I hadn't sent the final version yet because I was waiting for them to show their teeth, waiting for them to confirm what I already knew. That to them, I was nothing more than a wallet with a heartbeat. 2 days later, the email came. Subject line: special family meeting. Attendance expected. No greeting, no apology, just a time, a place, and an assumption that I would show up and sit quietly while they lectured me on family values. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I hit forward, sent it to my lawyer, and added one line: "They've made their move. Let's make ours." I didn't attend the meeting. Instead, at exactly the time it was scheduled to start, 6 p.m. sharp on a Sunday, I sent out the final draft of the amended trust to the entire family mailing list. It was attached to a formal letter from my attorney, written in neutral legalese but leaving no room for misinterpretation. The subject line read, "Notice of Trust Reorganization, effective immediately." The email was brief. "Dear family, following recent concerns regarding misuse of the family trust, failure to maintain transparency, and repeated personal harassment directed toward one of its primary contributors and co-trustees, the structure and access privileges of the trust have been legally revised. Effective immediately. 1. All non-contributing beneficiaries are suspended pending individual financial review. 2. All withdrawal requests must now be accompanied by detailed documentation and board approval. 3. New bylaw. Any current beneficiary who is found guilty of discriminatory behavior, exclusion of family members, or misuse of trust funds will be permanently removed from the trust. 4. Administration will now be overseen by an independent fiduciary board, including a third-party auditor to ensure fairness. This is not an act of revenge. It is a restructuring to return the trust to its original intent. Support, not entitlement. You are welcome to reach out with any concerns. I suggest you do so with respect. Andrew. Then I turned off my phone, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on my porch listening to the sound of birds over the treetops. I knew the fallout would be loud, and it was. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, there were 47 missed calls, 18 voicemails, and over 100 texts. Most were from the usual suspects: my mom, Uncle Paul, Aunt Lorraine, screaming into the void. My mom said I had humiliated the family. Paul accused me of being a dictator. Lorraine, in a voice shrill with panic, kept repeating the phrase, "You don't get to do this. You don't get to do this." But here's the thing, I did. Legally, ethically, and maybe for the first time in my life, morally. Chelsea texted me later that morning. "You just lit a match in a room soaked in gasoline. I'm proud of you." Daniel wrote, too, "I know it's messy, but thank you. You did what no one else ever had the spine to do." Even my cousin Natalie, who hadn't said 2 words to me since I moved out, emailed me to say she'd always felt like the trust was being abused, and that maybe now some real help could go to people who actually needed it. In the following weeks, things got quiet. Not because people had changed, but because they'd lost access to what really fueled their entitlement: my silence. Without it, they had to confront the mess they'd made. The family meeting I skipped apparently devolved into chaos. According to Chelsea, voices were raised, fingers pointed, and someone actually cried. Not out of remorse, but out of panic. The realization that the money train had derailed. My mom didn't speak to me for almost 2 months, and I didn't chase her. I didn't send follow-up texts or try to fix things like I used to. I just waited. I let the silence hang there like a mirror she couldn't look away from. Eventually, she called, not to apologize, at least not at first. She started with small talk, as if the last few months hadn't happened. But I didn't let her dance around it. "Why did you let them treat me like that?" I asked. "At brunch, at Christmas, every time I came around?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, "Because if I stood up for you, I'd lose them." That landed harder than I expected. Not because it shocked me, but because it confirmed something I'd always feared deep down. I was never her priority. Keeping the peace with the rest of the family meant more than protecting her own son. It had always been that way. I was just finally saying it out loud. "I guess you lost me instead," I said. There was silence, then a sigh. "I don't want to," she said. "I don't want to lose you." I didn't respond right away because I wasn't sure how to. But after a moment, I said, "Then stop treating me like I'm disposable." We talked for a while longer. She didn't magically transform into the mom I needed, but there was a shift, a tremor under the surface. I think she finally saw what her silence had cost her. The trust fund didn't collapse, by the way. In fact, under the new system, it started thriving. With the third-party oversight, the wasteful withdrawals stopped. We implemented a scholarship arm, created emergency grants for medical situations, and even launched a small business seed fund for cousins who wanted to start their own ventures. And this time, everything was transparent. One of the first recipients was Daniel. He launched a small eco-landscaping company. The trust matched his startup investment under clear, enforceable terms. He sent me a photo of his first big project, a rooftop garden for a local elementary school. In the message, he wrote, "You helped me believe I could do this. Thanks for not letting them ruin everything." And Chelsea, she became the second co-administrator. We added her to the board after she voluntarily submitted her own financials and helped design the accountability structure. She was sharp, compassionate, and deeply committed to making the trust what Grandpa intended. As for the rest of them, Uncle Paul tried to sue. Didn't get far. The documents Grandpa signed were airtight. The lawyer Grandpa had used had seen what was coming even back then. Paul wasted a lot of money trying to bully his way back into control. He ended up in more debt than before. At one point, he left a voicemail growling, "You're going to regret this." I played it on speaker while Chelsea and I reviewed scholarship applications. We both laughed. Aunt Lorraine was more passive-aggressive. She posted cryptic status updates on Facebook, things like, "Blood doesn't mean loyalty," and "Family is supposed to support you, not exile you." She kept tagging people who'd unfollowed her months earlier. One time she even tagged me. I blocked her. My sister. She said nothing. Didn't reach out. Just disappeared from the map. Part of me was relieved. Part of me mourned the idea of the sister I once thought I had. Mom's trying slowly. I don't pretend things are healed. But when she showed up to my birthday dinner this year on time with a small box and no snide remarks, it meant something. The card inside the box just said, "Thank you for making things better," even when I didn't understand. Kept it. The lake house, it's not off limits. But now people ask permission and they respect the answer. We reopened it for family reunions, invitation only. This year, Chelsea and I hosted a summer barbecue. We grilled by the water, played board games on the deck, and watched the kids build sandcastles just like we used to. Some family didn't come. Others did, nervously, unsure if they were still welcome. The ones who stayed late into the night, laughing under the patio lights? Those are the ones who never needed the trust fund to remember what family actually means. I still walk down to the dock sometimes. I sit at the edge, legs dangling above the water, just like I used to with Grandpa. I think about the choices I made, the silence I broke, the storm I caused, and I don't regret a single second of it. Because sometimes, the only way to fix a broken legacy is to burn the rotten parts down and rebuild it from ash. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My name's Eli. I'm 31. And I got engaged last fall to the love of my life, Maddie. She's smart, kind, and hilarious in that dry way that sneaks up on you. And she's never once made me feel like I needed to earn her love. That last part, that's important because I come from a family where everything, affection, attention, even acknowledgement, feels like it has to be earned. And even when you think you've done enough, someone else does one tiny thing and suddenly you're invisible again. That someone was usually my younger sister, Vanessa. Growing up, Vanessa was the golden child, the prodigy, the one with the piano recital, the straight-A report cards, the most likely to become a CEO yearbook quote. I wasn't a bad kid. I didn't rebel. I got decent grades, played soccer, and helped around the house, but somehow everything I did was just background noise to the blinding spotlight they kept shining on her. If I came home with a 92 on a science test, my mom would ask, "Did Vanessa help you study?" If I got the lead in the school play, my dad would say, "You should ask your sister to help you project more clearly. She's got great stage presence." I spent years trying to twist myself into someone worth seeing. I got a scholarship to a good university, landed a steady job in finance, and bought my own place. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me as something more than a support act in the Vanessa show. But every visit home was still filled with framed photos of her shaking hands with someone impressive, newspaper clippings of her interviews, and stories that all started with, "Did you hear what your sister did this time?" Still, I kept showing up, kept trying. Because deep down, I guess I believed that if I just kept earning it, kept being steady, successful, and good, they'd meet me halfway. Then came Maddie. She wasn't just my partner. She was the first person who saw me as a main character. She asked questions my parents never did. What do you want? How do you feel about that? What makes you proud of yourself? Being with her felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for 3 decades. So, when I proposed under the willow tree where we had our first date, it wasn't just about starting a future. It was about finally having a place and a person where I didn't have to prove anything. We set a date for the engagement party. Low-key, warm, and full of people who actually knew us as a couple. Friends from college, coworkers, Maddie's cousins, even my childhood best friend Luke, who flew in from Denver. Maddie and I spent weeks picking the venue, handwriting notes for every guest, and choosing the playlist. I told my parents and Vanessa months in advance. My mom gave a non-committal, "We'll see what we can do." My dad didn't say anything. Vanessa just sent a thumbs-up emoji. Still, I had hope. I even saved a table for them near the front. It stayed empty the entire night. Not a text, not a call, not even a last-minute excuse. I tried not to let it ruin the night, but when you're giving a toast in front of 50 people and you look around the room and your own parents aren't there, it hits differently. I plastered on a smile, clinked glasses, and danced with Maddie, but I felt like a 12-year-old again, wondering what I'd done wrong this time. The next morning, I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring like she'd been waiting for me. "Oh," she said. "We were busy celebrating your sister's promotion. You know she got VP at the firm, right? It was kind of last minute. Everyone was there. It was a big deal." I just stood there staring at my phone like it had slapped me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say anything cruel. I just said, "Then don't be surprised when you miss the wedding too." And I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to explain myself. I didn't wait for them to apologize. I just stepped back. A week passed. No follow-up, no apology. Vanessa posted a carousel on Instagram from her promotion bash. Champagne, a catered dinner, and a group photo with a caption that read, "Best night ever. Love my people." I wasn't tagged. Neither was Maddie. My mom was in 3 of the photos. Then last Saturday morning, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find my dad standing there. He looked older than I remembered. Not just age. Something in his eyes looked tired, like a man who'd finally tripped over a truth he'd been trying not to see. He held something in his hand. A letter, folded and slightly crumpled. My stomach dropped the second I saw it because I recognized it. It was the letter I wrote 5 years ago, but never meant for anyone to read. I'd written it during a rough patch after a particularly brutal holiday visit where they spent the entire Christmas dinner talking about Vanessa's potential and asking me if I was still doing that finance thing. I'd never given it to anyone. I just tucked it away in an old folder on my computer. But there it was, printed, highlighted in parts. He must have found it somehow. Maybe on a shared drive I forgot I gave him access to, or maybe Vanessa snooped like she used to do when we were kids. My dad held up the letter like it weighed more than it should. His voice cracked. "Is this why you cut us off?" I didn't answer. I stepped aside and said, "Read it out loud." He looked at me for a long moment, then stepped in. He unfolded the paper slowly, like someone disarming a bomb, and then he started to read. His voice wavered at first, like he wasn't sure whether to be indignant or ashamed, but the words left him anyway. "Dear Mom and Dad," he began. "This isn't a letter I plan to send because I already know what you'll say. You'll tell me I'm being dramatic, that I'm too sensitive, or that I'm making everything about me again. But I need to write this, if only to hear myself say it just once without being interrupted or told I'm overreacting." He paused. I said nothing. "I know Vanessa is your favorite. You've never said it out loud, but you didn't have to. It's in how you light up when she walks in. It's in how you brag about her to everyone while I stand 3 feet away holding news you never bother to ask about. It's in the way you remember her milestones but forget mine. It's in the way you show up for her always and for me, rarely and reluctantly." I watched him swallow, his fingers gripping the edge of the paper like it might try to fly away. He kept going. "There's a kind of loneliness that comes from being in a room full of people you're related to and still feeling like a stranger. That's how it felt at every birthday party, every holiday dinner, every family event where I sat quietly while the spotlight stayed on her and stayed off me. You didn't raise a wall between us. You just never invited me inside." My dad shifted and glanced at me like he wanted to say something, but the moment passed. He returned to the letter. "You'll probably say I should be happy for Vanessa, that she worked hard, that she deserves her success. I am happy for her. But being happy for someone else doesn't mean pretending I'm not invisible. It doesn't mean pretending I didn't grow up always trying to earn something that was freely given to her. Your pride, your attention, your love." His voice cracked on that last word. I could tell he wasn't prepared for how raw the letter was, how quietly damning. He looked up at me again, this time with something different in his expression. Not pity, not defensiveness, something more like understanding, or maybe the realization that understanding came years too late. But I didn't offer comfort. I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. He looked back down. I don't need a parade. I don't need constant applause. I just need you to see me, to know me. But I've spent 30 years waiting for that moment, and I've come to realize it's never coming. So I'm letting go. Not out of bitterness, but out of mercy for myself. If you ever wonder why I'm distant one day, why I stop coming home, stop calling, stop pretending it doesn't hurt, let this be your answer. Because I can't keep knocking on a door you only open when Vanessa isn't around. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. My dad didn't speak for what felt like a full minute. He just stood there, eyes wet, lips parted like a man trying to rebuild a sentence from the rubble of his own delusions. I didn't know, he finally whispered. You didn't want to, I said, my voice low but even. That's not the same thing. He nodded once, then again slower. Your mom hasn't seen this. I raised my eyebrows. Would it matter? That caught him off guard. I didn't mean it to be cruel, but I wasn't in the mood to cushion the truth. Not anymore. Not after the missed party. Not after every single time I came second, or not at all. He exhaled long and heavy. She loves you, Eli. We both do. You love the version of me that doesn't ask for anything, I replied quietly. You love the son who claps for Vanessa, who never makes things complicated, who doesn't call out when he's being ignored. He looked older again, like the truth aged him in real time. I wondered if this was what guilt looked like when it finally bloomed. Not loud or dramatic, just tired and full of silence. I shouldn't have let it get this far, he said. I should have seen it. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You were busy celebrating. He winced. I didn't let the silence settle too long this time. I didn't bring you here to hurt you, Dad. I needed you to know because I'm done pretending. Maddie and I are building something new, something healthy. I won't bring that into a space where I still have to fight to be seen. He looked down at the letter again, then slowly folded it with trembling fingers. I could tell he wanted to say more. Maybe explain, maybe apologize, maybe beg. But something in his posture told me he knew it wasn't time for that. That the damage wasn't a sudden rupture, but a slow erosion. That there wouldn't be a fix with just one sad conversation and a paper full of regret. Then, just as he turned to leave, he asked almost like a child, "Am I invited?" I paused, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted him to feel the weight of that question. I wanted him to know that it wasn't automatic anymore. That invitations like love, like respect, weren't just assumed. They were earned. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just looked him in the eye and said, "We'll see." And then I closed the door, not with anger, but with finality. That was 4 days ago. He hasn't called. Neither has my mom. But last night, Vanessa posted another photo, this time from a family dinner. My parents, her, a few cousins. The caption read, "Surrounded by the people who matter most." And just like that, I knew what I had to do next. The next morning, I stared at that photo longer than I care to admit. Not because it surprised me. I knew by now where I stood. But because it confirmed something I'd been wrestling with for months. They weren't going to change. Not for a wedding, not for a letter, not for me. And yet, knowing that still hurt in a way I couldn't quite explain. I showed it to Maddie as we sat on the couch, coffee cups in hand, the morning sun spilling through the window like nothing in the world could be wrong. She looked at it, then at me. "You okay?" I nodded. The kind of nod that really means no. "But you're tired of explaining why." "Yeah. I just thought maybe the letter would do something. Wake them up." "It probably did," she said gently. "Just not in the way you hoped." I set the phone down and rubbed my eyes. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strangest part. There wasn't any fire left, just a sort of cold, quiet clarity. I wasn't a kid chasing their approval. I was a man deciding who belonged in the life he was building. That night, I did something I'd been putting off for weeks. I opened the spreadsheet I'd been using for wedding planning, guest lists, seating charts, meal preferences, addresses, and scrolled to the family section. There they were, my mom, dad, Vanessa. I stared at their names for a long time. Then, without drama or ceremony, I pressed delete. Maddie didn't say anything. She was sitting across from me, reviewing caterer quotes. When I looked up, she just met my gaze and nodded. That small moment, her silent understanding, made me feel more seen than any toast or family gathering ever had. But of course, it didn't end there. 3 days later, my cousin Jenna called. She was one of the few relatives I still talk to regularly. Someone who never played sides, who never made me feel like I was competing for oxygen in a house that always had enough for one child, but not two. "Hey," she said cautiously. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Sure." "Did you uninvite your parents from the wedding?" I paused. "I just didn't send an invite." "That's not the same." She sighed. "Okay. Well, they're saying you're cutting them out of your life completely. Your mom called my mom in tears, and Vanessa's going around saying you're doing this for attention." I let out a dry laugh. Of course, that old line. "I'm doing it for peace," I said, which is the opposite of attention. "I get it," Jenna said quickly. "I do. I'm just giving you a heads up. There's some noise in the group chats. People asking if they should still come if there's some drama brewing." "They're adults," I said. "They can make their own decisions." Jenna hesitated. "You know this is going to blow up bigger than it needs to, right?" I nodded. "It already has." We hung up a few minutes later. I wasn't angry at her. I appreciated her warning, but the call left me with a weird sense of dread I couldn't shake. Not guilt, not regret, just that gnawing feeling you get right before a storm hits, when the sky is too quiet and the air smells like something's about to break. It came the next morning. A letter. Not an email, not a voicemail, a real, physical letter written in my mom's looping cursive on heavy cream stationery with the family crest at the top. The kind she used for Christmas cards and sympathy notes. Maddie found it first in the mailbox. She didn't open it, just handed it to me with a look that said, "Be careful." I sat at the kitchen table and opened it slowly. The paper crackled in that expensive way meant to impress. I read the first few lines and then stopped because it wasn't an apology. It was a defense. It was a long-winded explanation about how much they'd sacrificed for me growing up, how hard it was to balance two children with such different personalities, how they always tried their best, and how it was unfair of me to punish them for doing what they thought was right. Vanessa, my mom insisted, was just more high maintenance and needed more visible support. But that didn't mean I wasn't loved, too. There were phrases like, "We're sorry if you felt neglected," and "You've always been more independent," and the kicker, "Maybe we could have done things differently, but it's hurtful that you're punishing us now when we were just doing our best." I folded it up halfway through. Not because it was too much, but because it was exactly what I expected. Not once did they say they were sorry for missing the engagement party. Not once did they acknowledge the letter my dad had read word for word in my living room. Not once did they say, "We hurt you and we are sorry." I set the letter aside and didn't say anything about it for the rest of the day. Maddie didn't press. She just reached across the table and held my hand. That night, I sat in the dark, laptop open, cursor blinking over the blank reply I wasn't sure I should send. But then I remembered something from the original letter, the one my dad read aloud. Something I'd forgotten I even wrote. "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for presence." And that's when I knew what I needed to do. Not to get revenge, not to make a point, but to make peace with the fact that sometimes the people who raise you are not the people who see you. And that walking away doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. So the next morning I wrote one final message and I sent it. The message I sent that morning wasn't long. It didn't rehash the past or try to justify anything. I'd done enough of that in my life, trying to hold a mirror up to people who refused to look. This time I wrote simply, clearly, and for myself, not for their understanding. "Mom, Dad, I read your letter. I believe that you think you did your best. I also believe that your version of best left me feeling unseen for most of my life. I'm not writing to argue about what happened, or to debate which child needed more, or to trade guilt for guilt. I'm writing to say this. I'm done waiting for you to love me the way I asked. Quietly, clearly, and without conditions. I'm done measuring my worth against Vanessa's, trying to earn space in a family where I was always a shadow. I have a new family now, one I chose and one that chose me. And as much as it hurts to say you won't be at the wedding, I wish you well. I really do. But from this point forward, I need distance. Not to punish you, but to finally protect myself. Eli. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. 2 days passed, then 5, then a week. The silence was strangely comforting. Like the absence of a constant noise, I'd gotten so used to that I'd forgotten how heavy it was. For the first time in a long time, I slept well. I breathed deeper. I laughed more. Not the polite kind you give at family dinners, but the kind that comes from your chest, from people who make you feel safe. The wedding was a month away, and Maddie and I were deep in final prep. The guest list had been finalized. The venue was a converted greenhouse outside the city, full of climbing ivy and glass walls that caught the sunset like stained glass. It was a place full of light. Fitting, because this chapter of my life wasn't about escaping shadows. It was about stepping into something brighter. My best friend Luke was my best man. Jenna agreed to officiate. She'd known me since we were kids, and she was one of the only people from my extended family who never made me feel like a second act. Maddie's parents welcomed me like I was already their son. Her mom even joked, "We like you more than we like her sometimes." The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, buttoning my shirt slowly. My hands weren't shaking, just steady, calm. I'd expected to feel more nerves, but the truth was, this felt right. Like every step I'd taken, even the painful ones, had led me here. A few hours later, I stood under the canopy of flowers and glass, the sun beginning to dip, casting gold on everything. Maddie walked toward me in a dress that made time stop. I couldn't hear anything else. Not the music, not the guests, not the rustle of the trees. Just her. When she reached me, she took my hand and whispered, "You good?" I nodded. More than good. The ceremony was simple, honest, and beautiful. When Jenna read a quote we'd chosen together, "The family you build is always stronger than the one you're born into, because it's built on choice, not obligation." I saw a few guests glance toward me knowingly. I didn't flinch. I just held Maddie's hand tighter. We said our vows. We kissed. The greenhouse erupted in applause and laughter and love. And just like that, I had a new last name, or rather, a new beginning. But of course, stories like this never end without one last ripple. 3 days after the wedding, as Maddie and I were packing for our honeymoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text came through. "You didn't even tell us the date. You didn't give us a chance." It was from Vanessa. I stared at the screen for a while before handing it to Maddie. She read it, raised an eyebrow, and said, "You want to respond?" I shook my head. No. She already said it all without meaning to. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? They'd had 30 years of chances. I'd stood there open-hearted and hopeful again and again. I'd invited them to school plays, graduation ceremonies, and housewarming dinners. I called, visited, asked, and waited. And when I finally stopped asking for crumbs and started building my own table, they noticed. It reminded me of something a friend once told me. When you stop playing a game people built to keep you small, they'll call you selfish for walking off the board. Let them. We left for our honeymoon the next morning. 2 weeks in Greece, away from everything. I didn't check my email. I didn't scroll through family group chats. I didn't wonder what they were saying about me. I just lived. We walked along cliffs in Santorini, drank wine at sunset in Naxos, and swam in coves so blue they felt like another planet. One night, Maddie and I sat on a rooftop wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. "You ever think about going back?" she asked softly. "Back where?" She tilted her head. "To them." I thought about it, really thought about it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the tug, that ache, that need to be understood. It was gone. Or maybe it was still there, but it didn't control me anymore. I turned to her and smiled. "No, I think I finally arrived." When we came back home, life didn't suddenly become a fairy tale. There were still bills, work stress, and the occasional awkward conversation with distant relatives. But something had shifted inside me. I no longer measured myself against people who never really knew me. I didn't check their social media. I didn't try to fix things. I just moved forward. The holidays came and went. We spent Christmas with Maddie's family, full of laughter, board games, and messy wrapping paper. I didn't get a single text from my parents. And honestly, that silence was the greatest gift of all. Not because it proved anything, but because it finally didn't matter. Jenna stayed in touch. She sent photos from our wedding to her mom, who apparently cried when she saw them. She said you looked happy, Jenna told me, and that she didn't realize how much she'd missed. I just nodded. I didn't need them to realize anything anymore. I'd spent my entire life hoping they would. Now, I was too busy living the kind of life I used to dream about. One full of real love, chosen people, and peace that didn't need to be explained. Every now and then, someone asks if I think I'll reconcile with my family. My answer is always the same. I've made peace with the past, but I don't owe it my future. Because in the end, this story wasn't about them. Not really. It was about me, and the moment I finally stopped waiting to be chosen and chose myself instead. Now on to the next story. Story 6. So, a bit of background before I get into this mess. My name's Jake, I'm 26, and I guess you could say I've always been the odd one out in my family. Not for any dramatic reason, I'm just different. My siblings, Amanda, 28, and Ryan, 30, followed the perfect path my parents always wanted. College, marriage, steady jobs, and the white picket fence dream. Meanwhile, I took a different route. I didn't go straight to college. I worked random jobs, traveled a bit, and finally found my footing in freelance graphic design. I make decent money, live comfortably, and honestly, I'm happy. But to my parents, that's not enough. They don't outright say it, but it's clear in the way they treat me. I'm the immature one, the one who hasn't figured things out yet. And the worst part? They don't even try to hide it. Every family gathering, every holiday, there's always some comment about how I should start thinking about my future or find a real job, like Ryan. As if I'm some lost teenager instead of a full-grown adult. So, when my parents invited me to a big family dinner, I knew what to expect. These things were never casual affairs. My mom loved hosting these over-the-top fancy dinners where everyone dressed up like we were meeting the president. And of course, they always centered around Ryan and Amanda's amazing accomplishments. Still, I decided to go because, despite everything, they're my family. I keep giving them chances, hoping maybe this time will be different. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. I showed up right on time, dressed nicely, because God forbid I give them another reason to criticize me, and immediately felt out of place. The house was buzzing with conversation. Relatives catching up, glasses clinking, the smell of expensive food wafting from the dining room. I spotted Ryan and Amanda near my parents talking to some of our aunts and uncles. As soon as I walked in, my mom's eyes landed on me, scanning me up and down like she was checking for imperfections. "Jake," she said, plastering on a smile. "So glad you could make it." "Yeah, wouldn't miss it," I said, forcing a polite grin. Dad clapped me on the back. "Hope you're hungry. We went all out this time." I nodded, making small talk with a few relatives, but something felt off. There was an energy in the room, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. And then, as we all started heading to the dining room, I found out why. The dining table was long, elegantly set with expensive plates and silverware. The main table had about 10 seats, all taken by my parents, Ryan, Amanda, their spouses, and a few other relatives. Then, off to the side in a completely separate area was a smaller table, a literal kids' table. I blinked, half expecting this to be some weird joke. But no, the small table was set up with mismatched chairs, slightly lower than the main one, and at that table, my younger cousins. I looked back at my mom, confused. "Where am I sitting?" I asked, already knowing the answer but hoping, praying I was wrong. She gave me that same forced smile. "Oh, you'll be over there with the kids." I laughed, waiting for her to say she was joking. She didn't. "You're serious?" I said. Mom's smile barely wavered. "Jake, don't make this a thing. It's just easier this way." I glanced around, waiting for someone, anyone, to step in and say something, but no one did. Ryan and Amanda avoided my gaze, pretending to be too wrapped up in their conversations. My dad was already pouring himself a drink like nothing was wrong. How? I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. Mom sighed like she was the victim here. Jake, it's just that the main table is for the adults. You know, married couples, people with responsibilities. Right? I said slowly, feeling my jaw tighten. And I don't count as an adult because? Sweetheart, don't be difficult, she said, dropping her voice like I was embarrassing her. Ryan and Amanda have spouses, careers, homes. They're at a different stage in life. And what am I? Some teenager who doesn't belong. Of course not, she said. But the way she avoided my eyes told me everything. It's just more fitting this way. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't just about seating arrangements. This was them putting me in my place, telling me without saying it outright that I wasn't their equal, that I wasn't worthy of sitting with the real adults. And that's when I realized something. They didn't see me as part of their world. No matter what I did, no matter how successful I became on my own terms, I'd always be the kid who hadn't figured it out yet. In their eyes, I could have made 6 figures, bought a house, gotten married. None of it would matter because in their minds I wasn't good enough. I could feel my face heating up, but I wasn't going to let them see me get angry. I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of making me look childish. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I smiled a small, polite smile, the kind you give when you're done. You know what? I said, my voice light and even. I think I'm going to head out. Mom blinked. Jake, don't be ridiculous. Sit down. I shook my head, already backing away. No, it's fine. You guys enjoy your dinner. Jake, Dad said, finally looking up. Stop being dramatic. Dramatic. I let out a short laugh. I'm just following the seating chart. Guess I'll go sit somewhere else. And with that, I turned around and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left. At first, I thought they'd just let me go, that they'd shake their heads and call me immature behind my back. But as I got into my car, my phone started buzzing, then buzzing again and again. I glanced down at the screen. Calls, texts, my mom, my dad, even Ryan and Amanda. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because whatever they had to say, I knew one thing for sure. They didn't expect me to actually leave. And judging by how desperately they were calling me, they realized they'd made a mistake. But it was too late. And I had a feeling this was only the beginning. I sat in my car for a moment just watching my phone light up with call after call. My mom, my dad, even Amanda, who usually stayed out of things, were all suddenly desperate to talk to me. I wasn't going to answer. Not yet. Instead, I took a deep breath, put my phone on silent, and drove off. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed to get away, to clear my head. As I pulled onto the highway, my mind kept replaying the scene at the dinner table. The way my mom had smiled like she was doing me a favor. The way Ryan and Amanda had kept their mouths shut. The way my dad had dismissed me as dramatic, like I was some moody teenager instead of a grown man. The worst part? None of them thought they were wrong. They weren't panicking because they felt bad. They were panicking because I had actually left, because I hadn't played along this time. I kept driving until I found a quiet diner on the edge of town. One of those old-school places with neon lights and sticky booths. I parked, went inside, and ordered a coffee just to have something to do with my hands. I needed to think. I wasn't just angry, I was tired. Tired of always being the one expected to tolerate things. Tired of being the only one who had to be the bigger person. Tired of playing along with a family that only saw me as a lesser version of my siblings. But what was I supposed to do now? A notification popped up on my phone. Another message, this one from Ryan. Ryan, dude, just come back. It's not that serious. Not that serious? I scoffed, shaking my head. This wasn't about a seat at a table. It was about the fact that they saw me as less, and the fact that they expected me to just accept it. I was about to turn my phone off completely when another message popped up. Mom, Jake, answer your phone. We need to talk. Then another. Mom, come back now. You're embarrassing us. There it was. The real issue. It wasn't about me. It was about how it looked to everyone else. I took a sip of my coffee, considering my options. I could ignore them, I could go back and pretend nothing happened, or I could do something they wouldn't expect. I had a feeling this wasn't over, and if they thought I was just going to roll over and let this go, they were in for a surprise. I sat there for a while, stirring my coffee, watching the steam rise as I thought through my next move. I could practically hear my mom's voice in my head, that sharp, exasperated tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. Jake, stop overreacting. Just come back and stop making a scene. I used to fall for that. I used to think maybe I was the problem, that I was being dramatic. But this time, no, I wasn't going to let them guilt trip me into backing down. I took a deep breath and finally unlocked my phone. There were even more messages now. Mom, we're all waiting for you to come back. It's time to be an adult and stop sulking. Dad, enough of this nonsense. You're ruining the evening. Amanda, Jake, please just come back. This is getting awkward. And then the one that made me angry. Mom, we saved you some food, but if you take much longer, we'll have to throw it out. That was it. That was the best they could do. They weren't sorry. They weren't even pretending to be. They just wanted me to stop embarrassing them. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around my phone. If they thought I was overreacting, maybe it was time to show them what actual consequences looked like. So I made a decision. I paid for my coffee, got back in my car, and drove home. Not to their house, to mine. I wasn't going back to that dinner. I wasn't going to let them sweep this under the rug, and I definitely wasn't going to let them treat me like an afterthought ever again. When I got home, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and turned it face down on the table. Then I grabbed a drink from the fridge, sat down on my couch, and turned on the game. As the night dragged on, I kept thinking about the dinner. My mom's face when she told me I wasn't mature enough to sit with the adults. The way my dad had rolled his eyes, dismissing my feelings like they were an inconvenience. And Ryan and Amanda, they just sat there silent, as if it was normal to treat me like that. I wondered how much longer they'd keep up the act, how much longer they'd pretend that everything was fine and that I was the one causing the problem. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't the one causing problems. I was the one standing up to the problem. The phone buzzed again, this time from Amanda. I could almost hear her voice in my head as I unlocked it. Amanda. Jake, seriously, I get that you're mad, but you're blowing this out of proportion. Just come back. We'll talk about it. I laughed bitterly. Blowing it out of proportion? I had spent my entire life letting things slide, biting my tongue while my family made me feel small. And now that I'd finally stood up for myself, they wanted me to just sweep it under the rug like always? No. I left her message on read. I didn't want to be the angry, dramatic one anymore. I didn't want to be the problem just because I wasn't okay with being treated like a child. But I was angry, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. The night stretched on, and the phone kept buzzing. Calls, texts, all of it. I ignored them all. At some point, my phone started to feel like an anchor, pulling me back into their drama, into their expectations. But I had made my choice. I wasn't going to go back. I wasn't going to apologize. And I sure wasn't going to let them pretend like I hadn't been treated like garbage. Then, just as I was about to start watching a movie to distract myself, I got a message from my dad. Dad, you've gone too far this time. You've made a scene and embarrassed everyone. Come back and apologize or this will get worse. I could feel my heart rate pick up. Get worse? Was he threatening me? Was I supposed to just bow down and grovel? The thought of going back and begging for their forgiveness made my stomach churn. It was as if they thought they had the power to control me, like I was just some kid who'd forgotten his place. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the reply button. I wanted to fire back, tell him what I really thought about the way he treated me. But I knew that wasn't going to do anything. All it would get me was more guilt and more manipulation. Instead, I just turned my phone off. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The weight of their expectations, the constant pressure to be someone I wasn't, had been suffocating. But now it was like a burden had been lifted. Maybe they didn't understand what was happening, but I did. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I was finally doing something for me. Still, I knew they weren't going to let this go. I wasn't naive enough to think they'd just forget about it. They were going to come after me, each one in their own way. Maybe they'd guilt-trip me or try to manipulate me with promises of family unity. Maybe they'd even pretend like nothing happened and act like I was the one who'd overreacted. But none of that mattered now. I was done letting them make me feel like I wasn't enough. The next morning, I woke up to more messages. I'd left my phone off for the entire night, but I knew exactly what they'd say. Mom, I can't believe you'd act like this after everything we've done for you. You leave us like this? Ryan, Jake, stop being stubborn. Just come back and let's pretend this didn't happen. Dad, I'm disappointed you're acting like a child. The messages were predictable, and part of me was almost relieved to see they hadn't changed. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it definitely wasn't an apology or any sign that they might recognize how wrong they were. I thought about responding. I thought about telling them that I wasn't going to keep playing their games. I thought about calling them out, pointing out how they'd never really seen me as an adult, how they always treated me like the youngest even though I was in my 20s. But then I remembered what I had promised myself last night. I wasn't going to engage, so I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the day doing things for myself. I went to the gym, grabbed lunch at a place I'd always wanted to try, and spent the evening reading. It was peaceful. I had a quiet sense of satisfaction knowing I had taken control of my own life for the first time in a long while. But I wasn't naive enough to think this would be over. The phone calls started up again the next day. Mom, Jake, I can't believe you do this to your family. After everything we've done for you, you owe us an explanation. Amanda, can we talk? I know you're upset, but this isn't the way to handle it. I was done listening to them. I wasn't going to beg them to understand. I wasn't going to try and make them see my side. They had already made up their minds. It was time for a new plan. This wasn't just about a kid's table anymore. It was about how they had treated me my entire life. It was about the constant expectation that I would just accept being less than. I knew what I needed to do, and I was going to make sure they never treated me like that again. Days passed, and the messages and calls slowed down. It seemed like my family thought I'd just give in eventually, that I'd cave under the pressure of guilt. But each time I saw their names flash on my screen, I just let the phone ring or ignored the texts. I had made my choice, and there was no turning back. I wasn't going to just fade away, though. I wasn't going to disappear into silence. I thought long and hard about this, and when I decided to take control, I knew what I had to do. I've been avoiding them for a few days, but it was time to stop hiding. I needed to confront them once and for all. So, I took a deep breath, grabbed my keys, and drove over to my parents' house. When I pulled up, I saw my mom standing at the door, her arms crossed, looking like she was waiting for me. I could tell she expected me to apologize, to waltz in and beg for forgiveness. She probably thought that once I showed up, everything would be fine again. But I wasn't going to play that game anymore. I parked my car, walked up to the door, and knocked. My mom opened it, her expression tight, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes when she saw me standing there. Jake, I'm glad you finally came. I didn't waste any time. I'm not here to apologize, I said flatly. Her expression faltered just for a moment. She recovered quickly, though. What do you mean? You've been acting like a child, and we're all waiting for you to come back and make things right. This is getting ridiculous. I took a deep breath. This was it. I had been stewing in my frustration for years, letting it fester. Now, I wasn't going to hold back. I'm not the one acting childish here, Mom. You and Dad have treated me like a second-class citizen for as long as I can remember. You've always brushed me aside like my thoughts and feelings don't matter. She blinked, taken aback. Jake, that's not true. We love you. We've always loved you. We've given you everything we could. I shook my head. Love? If you loved me, you wouldn't treat me like I'm not worthy of sitting at the table with you, like I'm still some kid who doesn't know what's going on. You tell me I'm not mature enough to sit with the adults, but you never let me be an adult. You keep me at arm's length as if I'm not allowed to have a voice. Her face flushed, and I could see her struggle to maintain control. You're overreacting. You need to calm down and understand that it's just how things are, tradition. And you're being difficult. No, you need to understand something, I retorted. I'm done being quiet about this. I'm done pretending like it's okay. For years, you've treated me like I'm less than. You've always given my siblings the benefit of the doubt while making me feel like I had to prove myself. And I've had enough of it. I could hear my heart beating louder, but I didn't let myself flinch. This was the moment. I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not going to sit at the kids' table just because it's easier for you. I'm an adult, and the way you've treated me, the way you continue to treat me, is wrong. My mom was quiet for a moment, and I could see the realization settling in her eyes. I wasn't going to back down this time. I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. I don't know where all of this is coming from, Jake. We've done everything we could to raise you right. Why can't you just appreciate it? I do appreciate the good things, Mom, but what I don't appreciate is being dismissed over and over again. I don't appreciate being made to feel like I'm less than everyone else in this family. And I'm done. I'm done playing along with this charade. I took a step back, but I wasn't finished. I couldn't walk away without saying everything that had been festering inside me for so long. You've made me feel invisible for years. You've made me feel like nothing I did was ever good enough. I've been ignored and undermined, and all for what? So you can keep up your perfect little family image while I'm stuck in the background. There was no going back now. I had laid it all out there. I turned and started walking toward the driveway, not looking back. But my mom's voice stopped me. Jake, don't just walk away from this. Don't make this worse. I stopped, my back to her. You've made it worse, Mom. I'm done with the guilt trips, the manipulation. This isn't about a dinner or a seat at a table. It's about the way you've made me feel every day of my life. I took a few more steps, the weight of her words trailing behind me. I was leaving, but I was also standing my ground. I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. As I opened the car door, I heard my dad's voice from the house. Jake, if you walk out that door, don't come back. Don't ever come back. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the door, cranked the engine, and drove away. The roar of the engine felt almost like an exhale I had been holding for years. And with each passing mile, it felt like I was shedding more of the weight I had carried all my life. But the thing was, it wasn't over. I knew it wasn't over. The family hadn't just let me go quietly like I thought they might. They were angry, and I was expecting that. But what came next wasn't just anger. It was something colder, something deeper. It had been a few days since that confrontation, and as expected, my phone had been blowing up nonstop. At first, I ignored every call, every text. I didn't want to fall back into that trap. But then, when I got a voicemail from my dad, a voicemail where he was practically begging me to come home and talk things through, I couldn't help but listen. Jake, this is your father. Look, I know things got heated, but you're not thinking clearly. You need to come back. Sit down with your mother and I. This isn't how families work. Don't let this drive a wedge between us. I know you're angry, but don't make things worse. It was the same old line. Don't make things worse. The problem was, they had already made it worse. Every time they pushed me aside, every time they treated me like an afterthought, every time they minimized my feelings, they made it worse. And yet here they were, acting like I was the one who was unreasonable. I deleted the voicemail and blocked their numbers. It felt like I was cutting the last thread that had tied me to that toxic relationship. But the next day, my sister Rachel called. She was more level-headed, and I knew she was calling because she wanted to smooth things over. She didn't want to see the family torn apart. Jake, please just talk to Mom and Dad. They're devastated. They don't know what went wrong, Rachel pleaded. Devastated? I scoffed. I'm the one who's been devastated for years. Have you ever listened to me, Rachel? Have you ever wondered why I'm the one who's always left out, always treated like I don't matter? There was a pause on the other end of the line. I know you feel that way, but it's not true. They love you. They just don't know how to express it. I don't need their love if it's conditional, I snapped. If they really loved me, they would have respected me a long time ago. I'm done being the punching bag. I'm done. Rachel was quiet for a long time, and I could tell she was trying to process everything. Jake, this isn't about the dinner or the seat at the table. This is about something deeper, something you need to work through with them. Don't let this destroy us, please. I sighed, rubbing my temples. It's not just about the dinner. It's everything. It's the years of being treated like I'm invisible. I can't keep pretending everything's fine just to keep the peace. Just think about it, okay? She said before hanging up. And just like that, the calls kept coming. My mom, my dad, my siblings. Everyone trying to convince me to come back, to talk, to make it right. But as the days passed, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation anymore. It wasn't just about standing up to them. It was about finally giving myself permission to live the life I wanted without constantly trying to meet their impossible standards. And that's when it hit me. Maybe it wasn't just them who needed to change. Maybe it was me who needed to change. I didn't need to be the person they wanted me to be. I didn't need to sit at their table under their rules, their expectations. I could build my own table with people who understood me, who respected me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I was done with their manipulation. I was done with being the family's afterthought. So now I'm left with a choice. Do I continue down this path of self-respect and independence, even if it means severing ties with my family for good? Or do I go back, try to mend things, and keep pretending like nothing ever happened? I'm at a crossroads. So Reddit, I'm asking for your thoughts. Am I in the wrong here? Should I try to repair my relationship with my parents? Or is it time to fully cut ties and live my own life away from all the toxicity? Would love to hear your opinions. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I walked into my parents' house with a homemade cake. My dad looked at me and said, "Don't cause drama. Just leave it and go." Mom took the cake for me, laughed, and set it on the floor for the dog. "At least he'll enjoy it," she said. I just left. That night, I emptied our joint account. The next day, when they saw the empty balance, I hadn't even taken off my coat when my dad looked at me from the couch and said, "Don't cause drama. Just leave it and go." That was my Christmas welcome. I remember staring at him, then at the blinking lights tangled half-heartedly around the staircase. Same decorations from the last 10 years, only dustier. I stood there holding the cake, a 3-layer cranberry spice with mascarpone frosting. I'd made it from scratch. No box mix, no shortcuts, even candied the orange peel myself. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I brought something nice, if I tried just one more time, they'd meet me halfway. Mom walked in from the kitchen, looked at the cake, and actually laughed. A short, dry kind of laugh. She took it from my hands without even glancing at me, walked to the corner, and placed the entire thing, delicate piping and all, on the floor next to Max, their golden retriever. He sniffed it and immediately started licking the frosting. "At least he'll enjoy it," she said. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. I just turned around and walked out the door. The cold hit my face like a slap, but I didn't zip my coat. I drove home in silence, my phone buzzing with texts I ignored. And that night, I emptied the account. It was the joint one, the one I opened 2 years ago when my dad lost part of his pension and they were falling behind on mortgage payments. I was the only one consistently adding to it. They stopped contributing after 4 months. I'd been paying property taxes, homeowners insurance, and even covered their water heater repair last winter. They always had an excuse, and I always believed them until that night. I didn't feel guilty when I moved the money, $23,178. Not a cent of it was stolen. I didn't spend it. I just transferred it to a private account and removed their access. By morning, I was the villain. First, it was the missed calls, then the texts, then the threats. My dad wrote that he was going to file a police report. My mom said she was embarrassed to call me her daughter. Then, she added a message that stuck with me. "You always ruin everything. You were born dramatic." That's when I knew this wasn't new. This was just another chapter in a long, tired pattern, and I'd let it go on for years. At noon, I got a text from Emily. "We need to talk. Call me." She never took sides. That was her role. Middle sister, forever neutral. I told her to come over that night, and she did. But she brought Jeremy with her, which I wasn't ready for. He was already fuming when he walked through the door. Didn't say hi. Just said, "You stole their money." I told them both to sit down. I laid everything out. I showed them bank statements, receipts, and every bill I'd paid in the last 2 years. I pulled up emails where Mom thanked me for handling the electric again. I even showed them a screenshot of the message she sent last Christmas asking if I could front them just a few hundred more to get through the month. Emily was quiet. She looked at the paper trail and didn't argue. Jeremy didn't say much either, but after a minute, he stood up and said he was going to talk to them. I asked him not to. I told him they'd twist it, that they always did. He left anyway. That night, Emily stayed. We sat on the couch watching the tree lights blink in silence. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I always thought you were exaggerating." She didn't say more than that. She didn't have to. The next day, I didn't hear from Jeremy. Not in the morning, not by afternoon. I knew he'd gone over there. I didn't need confirmation. The silence told me everything. Around 3 p.m., I got a notification from the old group chat we never used anymore. The one that was originally made to plan a beach trip 5 years ago, and then slowly turned into a graveyard of unread messages and awkward birthday reminders. Jeremy wrote, "We're all meeting tomorrow, 4 p.m., Emily's house." A second later, Mom chimed in, "About time. We need to stop pretending like Monica's behavior is okay." I stared at the screen for a long time. I wanted to respond. I wanted to say, what behavior? Wanting to be treated like a human being? Wanting to not be used. But I already knew how that would go. Anything I said would be turned into evidence that I was unstable, offensive, or emotional. I closed the app and didn't say anything at all. The next day, I arrived 10 minutes early. I sat in my car for a while outside Emily's place and watched a couple of kids ride by on scooters. It was weird thinking about how I used to come here for movie nights and lazy Sundays. Now it felt like walking into court. I brought a folder not out of spite, but because I didn't want to rely on memory anymore. It had every transaction I'd made into that joint account. Every time I covered for them, every bill I paid, and every time Mom or Dad messaged me asking for help and promised to pay me back. They showed up together late, of course. Mom walked in with a smile like she was the guest of honor. Dad was quiet, which wasn't unusual. He only really talked when he had something to complain about. Jeremy came in last, already looking irritated. They barely said hello. Emily sat at the kitchen table with a pot of tea between us, like we were going to sip chamomile and fix decades of damage with polite conversation. Mom started immediately. She said I overreacted, that the cake thing was a misunderstanding, a joke, and that I was always too sensitive. Then she turned it into a character assassination. She said I'd always been this way. Dramatic, overly emotional, easily offended. She said I'd always made things harder than they needed to be. Dad added that what I did with the account was criminal, that I had no right, and that I put them in danger. Jeremy jumped in, asking me if I had any idea what kind of trouble I'd caused, how the mortgage was due next week and they were panicking. I waited until they were done talking. Then I handed the folder to Emily. No speeches, no explanations, just paper. She flipped through it slowly. You could see it hit her page by page. Transfers, emails, payment confirmations, and a printout of a message from Mom asking if I could help cover just one more thing back in March. Then Emily looked up and asked Mom directly, "Why didn't you put anything into this account?" Mom blinked like she hadn't expected to be asked that out loud. She mumbled something about how she didn't remember, how she thought it was for emergencies only, and that it wasn't a big deal. Emily didn't let it go. She pointed out that I'd been covering their mortgage payments and heating bills, that Dad's dental work was paid with my credit card, and that I hadn't taken a single cent from them in return. Jeremy took the folder next. He looked through it, then set it down and stared at both of them. "Why did you let her do all this?" he asked. Dad finally spoke up. He said he thought I liked feeling needed, that if I was so upset about it, I should have said no. That's the moment I stopped caring if they ever saw my side. It was clear they didn't feel guilty. They didn't feel anything at all. We argued. I told them they humiliated me on Christmas and, instead of apologizing, they doubled down. I said I'd been supporting them for years and never once made them feel small about it. but they had no problem embarrassing me in front of the dog. They didn't deny it. Mom just said, "If you want to be treated like an adult, stop acting like a victim." Jeremy didn't defend me, but he didn't defend them either. Emily was the only one who looked genuinely shaken. She asked if we could try family therapy, saying maybe there was still something worth saving here. I didn't answer. I just picked up the folder and left. That night, Mom sent me a text. "You're still our daughter, but you need help. We're not the enemy." The next morning, I got a call from the bank. They said a fraud report had been filed against me regarding a joint account, filed by my parents. The woman on the phone sounded confused. She asked me if I was aware of a recent dispute over a joint account. I told her yes. Then she asked if I'd made the transfer. I said yes again. She paused like she was waiting for more. I could tell she'd seen the activity and probably expected something messy, maybe some sign of fraud. But the truth was clean. My name was on the account. I'd authorized every cent. Nothing was forged. No password stolen. Just a quiet, complete withdrawal of money I'd put there in the first place. She said the report would be reviewed, but based on what she was seeing, I had nothing to worry about. Then she told me gently that I might want to close the account to avoid further confusion. I thanked her. Then I hung up and sat there on the floor of my apartment, phone still in my hand, staring at the wall like it had answers. They tried to report me, not even 48 hours after pretending they wanted to talk things through. After Jeremy and Emily sat in the same room and tried to patch things up, after Mom texted me about love and family and not being enemies, they still went to the bank behind my back. I didn't say anything to Emily right away. I figured she was probably already getting calls from them, hearing their version, trying to keep the peace. But later that night, she texted me a screenshot. It was a message from Mom sent to both her and Jeremy. "I don't know what's wrong with Monica anymore. She's always been unstable. She was never the smart one." Emily didn't write anything with it. She just sent the image. That was enough. That same night, I started writing a list. It was something my therapist once suggested back when I was trying to set boundaries. A list of what you've done for people who take you for granted. Not to hold it over their heads, just to remind yourself you're not crazy. I listed everything. The mortgage help, the bills, the times I left work to drive them to appointments, the job I turned down 2 years ago because it would have meant moving out of state and they weren't ready for that, the groceries, and the calls with their insurance company when they got denied for the first claim. Then I wrote down everything they'd done in return. It was a much shorter list. The next day, I got a call from Jeremy. He asked if we could meet, just the two of us. We met at a coffee place near his apartment. I didn't expect much, but he looked more tired than angry this time. He said he'd seen the bank documents again, this time with fresh eyes. That maybe he'd been too quick to assume I was acting out. That maybe he'd bought into Mom and Dad's version of things without really looking at the facts. Then he asked something I wasn't ready for. "Do you still want to help them?" I didn't answer right away. He said they were struggling, that the mortgage was behind, and that Dad might need surgery in the spring. He said that if I walked away now, it would get worse for them. He didn't say it outright, but I could tell he still thought I should help, that I should just be the bigger person. But I asked him a question right back. "Did they tell you they filed a fraud report against me?" He froze. "No, they didn't." That changed everything. By the time we left, he looked unsure. He said he needed time to think. I told him to take it. I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. Later that night, Emily called. She said she was coming over and she brought a folder. Inside were screenshots of messages Mom had sent her over the past year. Some of them were about me. Most of them weren't kind. One said I'd always been dramatic, even as a kid. Another said I wasn't built for adult life and that she pitied whoever married me. One just said, "She's so stupid sometimes it actually scares me." I read them all. Then I handed the folder back. Emily said she didn't know, that she never realized how bad it had gotten, and that she didn't want to be part of it anymore either. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she asked if I was really done. I said I didn't know. But the next morning, I called the mortgage company and told them I wouldn't be helping with payments anymore. A week after I told the mortgage company I was done, the voicemails started coming in. First, it was just my mom, short, clipped messages about responsibility. Then longer ones, the kind that switch between guilt and blame like she couldn't decide which worked better. Then came Dad's voice, grumbling through some kind of half-apology that turned into a lecture halfway through. Then they stopped. That silence should have felt like peace, but it didn't. It felt like something was winding up, like when a storm pulls back just before it breaks. 3 days later, I found out from Emily what they were really doing. She called and said they were trying to get a lawyer. Not for the account, not anymore. The bank had shut that down. But they were asking about financial coercion, saying I manipulated them into letting me control the money and now I was using it to punish them. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. I had created the account at their request. I'd paid every bill they sent my way, and now they were calling that manipulation. I told Emily I didn't care. I had everything documented, every transfer, every agreement. And if they wanted to try and take this further, I'd gladly let a judge see it all. But then she said something else. They told Aunt Laura you were taking money for drugs. That stopped me cold. I hadn't spoken to Aunt Laura in almost 2 years. Not since a fight between her and Mom over some family heirloom no one even wanted. But she and Mom still talked now and then, and apparently my parents were telling anyone who'd listen that I had a dependency problem and that they were afraid for me. Emily said she didn't believe them, but Jeremy might, and he'd started calling around asking questions. That's when something clicked. This wasn't just about money anymore. They were trying to wreck my reputation in the family. They wanted to make me look unstable, to make me the scapegoat so they could keep control of the narrative. They wanted to make sure that even if I walked away, no one would follow me. So I decided to go one step further. I posted a detailed thread on a private family message board, the one we used to organize holidays, the one no one really posted in anymore, but everyone still checked. I kept it factual. No insults, no emotional appeals, just receipts. I uploaded screenshots of payment confirmations, notes where my mom thanked me for paying the utilities, and a timeline of every deposit I made into the joint account. Dates, amounts, context. Then I ended it with one line. If you've heard rumors about me, I hope you compare them with these facts before deciding who to believe. I didn't expect anyone to respond, but the next morning, I woke up to 17 unread messages. Cousins, aunts, even 2 people I hadn't spoken to since my high school graduation. Most of them said the same thing. We had no idea. Thank you for speaking up. This explains a lot. Then came the biggest surprise. Jeremy messaged me privately. All it said was, "They lied to me." A few hours later, he showed up at my door. He looked like he hadn't slept. He said Mom told him I threatened them, that I stole the money to run away, and that I was unhinged. But after seeing the message board and calling the bank himself, he knew the truth. Then he handed me something. It was a printed list of transactions, one I hadn't seen before. Turns out my parents had opened a separate account months ago, one not connected to me, and they had been receiving money into it from Social Security, from a small inheritance they never told anyone about, and even from Jeremy. They weren't broke. They just stopped paying the mortgage on purpose. Jeremy found out when he checked his own transfers and realized the money he thought was going toward the house was being moved into that private account instead. They'd been hoarding it. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room while Jeremy read through every line of what they'd hidden. We didn't speak much. There wasn't anything left to say. But before he left, he said one more thing. We've been backing the wrong people for years. After Jeremy left, I sat in the dark with the papers he gave me still on the coffee table. The numbers didn't lie. Over $14,000 quietly funneled into a separate account they never told us about. Dates going back almost 10 months. Transfers they made while telling me they couldn't afford groceries. Money they hoarded while asking for mine. They had money. They just didn't want to use it if they could squeeze it out of me instead. And I kept giving it for years. Not because I was stupid, but because I thought one day they'd wake up and treat me differently. I thought I mattered, like I wasn't just the default emergency fund in human form. The next few days moved strangely, quiet but heavy. Jeremy sent me screenshots of texts from them. First denial, then excuses, then finally accusations. They told him I'd manipulated the situation, that I was twisting facts to turn the family against them. Then they told him he was ungrateful, too, and that if he wanted to throw his lot in with me, they wouldn't stop him. He sent me one last screenshot that just said, "You two deserve each other." It was from Mom. Meanwhile, Emily went full librarian. She pulled out old group messages, voicemails, and even copies of checks I'd written to them over the years. She didn't say it outright, but I think she needed the proof for herself to know she wasn't imagining how bad it really was. On New Year's Day, I posted the final update to the private family message board. No drama, just the receipts. Bank statements, messages, dates, timelines. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't speculate. I just laid out the truth. Then I logged off and turned off my phone for 24 hours. When I turned it back on, I had dozens of messages. A few distant cousins told me they were sorry, that things always seemed off whenever my parents were involved in anything. One even told me they remembered a time when my mom tried to guilt-trip them into co-signing a car loan. But then I got the weirdest one. It was from my mom's old friend, Diane. She wrote, "I'm not surprised. Your mom's been calling you her backup plan since you were in college." I read that one twice. Backup plan. That's what I was. Not a daughter, not a person, a fallback. By the second week of January, the mortgage company contacted me. They said the loan was severely delinquent and, though I wasn't legally responsible anymore, I was still listed on older documents and would continue to receive default notices unless they were updated. I told them to remove me from everything permanently. Then I called a lawyer just to make sure they couldn't pull anything else. The next day, I got 2 texts from my mother. The first said, "You've embarrassed us enough. You've hurt your own family over a few dollars." The second came 2 hours later. "Please, we're going to lose the house. You don't want that on your conscience." That night, I ignored the calls. I ignored the emails. I sat on my balcony with a blanket, watching the city and trying to feel something. Relief, maybe, or peace. But mostly what I felt was hollow. Emily thought we should try one more time. She said maybe now, after everything, they were finally ready to change. She'd been talking to them again separately, said they sounded broken, and said they missed us. Jeremy didn't say much when I brought it up to him. He just said, "They miss what we gave them, not who we are." So I went. Emily hosted it again. Neutral ground, same kitchen table, same tired dynamic. They showed up on time this time. That was new. My mom looked thinner. My dad looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Neither of them said anything at first. Then, Mom cleared her throat and said she was sorry. Not for anything specific, just a vague, shapeless apology that sounded like it was rehearsed in the car. Dad asked if we could move past this, that family sticks together, that things got messy, but they didn't mean to hurt anyone. Then they said they needed help, just a little, to avoid foreclosure, to catch up on utilities, to get through a bad stretch. They were still holding on to the idea that we might say yes, that we'd soften, that guilt would win out in the end. I told them I knew about the second account. They didn't deny it. I asked what they were saving it for. Mom said without even blinking, "For retirement. We deserve that." Then she looked straight at me and said, "You were always the emotional one, Monica. Always so eager to prove something. That was your weakness." Then she said it. The thing I think she'd been dying to say for years. "You were always the stupid one." Emily didn't flinch because she had her phone in her lap recording the whole thing. When the meeting ended, no one hugged. No one said goodbye. Felt like watching something die. That night, Emily uploaded the recording to the family message board and then deleted it 5 minutes later. She said she didn't care if anyone heard it. She just needed proof for herself that it had really happened. The next morning, I blocked them. Phone, everything. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I finally understood that nothing I gave them, not money, not love, not forgiveness, would ever be enough. And maybe cutting them off completely wasn't the worst thing I've ever done. Maybe it was the first right thing. I thought blocking them would bring some sort of release. Not joy, not satisfaction, just a clean edge to what had always been a jagged, bleeding mess. But the truth is, when you walk away from people who've been in your life forever, even when they've done real damage, it doesn't feel clean. It feels like pulling a rusted nail out of your skin. Necessary, but ugly. Weeks passed. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was dense, heavy in places where I was used to chaos. I kept thinking I'd miss them more, that I'd reach for the phone during a random good moment and feel that gut pull of regret. But I didn't. I didn't miss the manipulation, the constant edge, the way they made me question every memory. Then it happened. I got the final confirmation that I'd made the right choice. Not from them directly, but from someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. Samantha, my cousin on my dad's side. We weren't close, but we'd always been friendly enough. She messaged me on a Thursday night like she was hesitating even as she typed it. "Hey, this might be out of line, but I thought you should see this." Attached was a screenshot of a group chat I didn't know existed. The name at the top read, "Real Family." It included my parents, a few uncles, some cousins, people who'd gone quiet when everything exploded. My mother had written, "Monica's playing the victim again. She's pathetic. Always has been. She was never that bright, just loud. Honestly, it's a relief to have her out of our lives." Then my father. "She thinks she's so strong. But let's see how long that lasts. She's cut off everyone who ever cared about her. She's not smart. She's just stubborn." Someone else replied, "She'll come back. They always do, especially the stupid ones." I felt that old heat rise behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I just stared at it, not surprised, not hurt exactly, just stunned by the consistency. That even now, after everything, they still needed to convince people I was the problem. They still needed to turn me into the villain so they could stay the victims in their own story. I didn't reply to Samantha. She didn't ask for one. I think she already knew what that screenshot meant. But that night, I opened every file tied to them on my computer. PDFs of old bank transactions, scanned receipts, screenshots, voicemails, and I deleted them. I deleted the backup folder, too. I didn't need evidence anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone. Then I went into my contacts and cleared out every person who stood by while they tried to destroy me. Anyone who watched them twist the truth and said nothing. Anyone who nodded quietly when they called me unstable or dramatic or stupid. I didn't want to carry any more of them with me. A few days later, I went out alone for the first time in a while. I walked into a small bakery I'd never been to and bought myself a cake. Just a plain vanilla with raspberry filling. Nothing fancy. When the cashier asked what the occasion was, I said, "Just me." I brought it home, set it on my kitchen table, and sliced off a piece. No one mocked it. No one fed it to a dog. No one told me I was too emotional or not enough of something else. It was just mine, and I liked it. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I didn't look back. I lay in bed and thought about everything I gave, everything they took, and how much quieter the world sounded now that their voices were finally out of it. And I realized something. I don't want them to change anymore. I don't want reconciliation. I don't even want an apology. I just want distance. And I have it now. After all the years I spent trying to be what they needed, I finally became what I needed, free. Maybe that's not the ending people hope for, but it's mine, and that's enough. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I was told to pop by for my sister's anniversary dinner. When I got there, the host said, "You're not on the seating list." I peeked in. There was my family laughing without me. I just nodded, walked to the server, and said, "Add a bottle of wine to their table, the expensive one. Then bill it to their name." 10 minutes later, my sister shouted, "Doll 970? Seriously?" I laughed, and then my dad. They told me to pop by. That was the exact wording in the family group chat. No formal invite, no details, just a casual, dismissive pop by if you're around. Like I was the neighbor who might swing in for 5 minutes. Not the brother of the woman whose wedding anniversary was being celebrated. That's how it's always been with my sister Vanessa, the golden child. She's loud, controlling, and always has to be the center of every room. And my parents have worshipped the ground she walks on since we were kids. I used to think I was imagining it, that it was in my head, but the last few years they've made it crystal clear. Still, I decided to show up. Not because I wanted to be part of whatever self-obsessed party she was throwing for herself, but because I knew something was off. I could smell it. Vanessa doesn't do low-key. If it was her anniversary, she'd have made it a red carpet event. But I was getting crumbs. That meant she had something planned. I got to the restaurant at 7:10. It was a high-end Italian place in the city, not far from where I work. The host looked at me, tapped a few keys on his tablet, and then gave me the kind of smile you reserve for someone who's just been told they don't matter. "You're not on the seating list." I blinked. "What?" "No reservation under your name. No seat at any of the tables." That's when I glanced behind him and saw them through the glass partition. The long mahogany table, the candles, the white linen. Vanessa, in a sequin dress, was laughing so loud you could probably hear her from the parking lot. My mom was next to her. My dad was pouring wine like it was the Last Supper. And yeah, every single one of them was there. Cousins, family, friends, even my college roommate who I hadn't seen in 5 years. Everyone but me. I just nodded, walked past the host like it was nothing, and made my way to the bar. I flagged down a server and pointed toward their table. "Send a bottle of Sassicaia to that table. Actually, make it 2 and the beluga caviar platter. Add a Wagyu tasting course. Then, bill it to the table under the name Vanessa Cross." The waiter raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. That place was used to people showing off. I sat at the bar and ordered a beer. I watched as the plates started arriving. A silver dome was lifted in front of my dad. A gold-rimmed wine glass was poured until it shimmered. I sipped slowly, waiting. 10 minutes later, I heard her voice. Shrill, sharp, cutting through the ambient music. $2,170? Seriously? The whole table froze. Her husband, Scott, just stared at the receipt like it was in another language. My dad started demanding to know who ordered it. The server, deadpan, just pointed toward the bar. That's when she saw me. I didn't look away. I just lifted my glass. She stormed over like she was going to slap me. Instead, she hissed something about how I was insane, how I ruined everything, and how I embarrassed her in front of literally everyone that matters. I stood up and said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "You invited me to pop by, so I popped by. And you didn't want me at your table? That's fine. But if you're going to exclude me, maybe don't do it in a place where I can buy your silence." She started yelling. The whole restaurant turned to look. People from nearby tables were whispering. Her husband didn't say a word. Not one word. He just stared into his napkin like he was trying to disappear. Then came my dad, trying to drag her away while yelling at me about family unity and not making scenes. I let them go. I was done. I finished my drink, left cash, and walked out into the night. I was calm, cold, and focused because I knew that wasn't the end. That was just the opening act. I woke up the next morning to a buzzing phone and the kind of tension that hangs in the air before a thunderstorm. 12 missed calls, a wall of unread texts. Most of them from Vanessa. I didn't need to read them. I already knew the usual. How I'd ruined everything, how she'd never been so humiliated, and how I was dead to her. I let the phone sit there for a while, made coffee, and took a shower because that moment, that rare quiet, was mine, and I wasn't going to let her hijack it. Then Dad called. He didn't even say hello. "Your sister's upset." I almost laughed. Not surprised, not confused, not interested in what happened. Just straight into the guilt trip. I could already hear the lecture loading in his throat. So I cut him off. I told him exactly what went down. I said I got to the restaurant, was told I wasn't on the list, looked in, and saw the whole family there laughing, drinking, and pretending I didn't exist. I told him I was sick of being the afterthought, the if there's room guy. So yeah, I ordered some things, expensive things, and I did it in their name. Because if I wasn't going to be family, I might as well be a very expensive ghost. He didn't even pause, just started ranting about how I disrespected the family, how money isn't a weapon, and how Vanessa had been crying all night. And then the kicker, he said she might be pregnant. That was the moment I knew she was lying. That's Vanessa's signature move. Drop a bombshell when the attention drifts. Pregnancy was just a deflection. No way she wouldn't have led with that at dinner if it were true. I told him to call me when someone actually cared about what was done to me, not just how I reacted to it, and hung up. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there she was, sunglasses indoors like some overworked reality star. Scott was behind her, hands in his pockets, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. She didn't wait to be invited in. She just walked right through like she owned the place. You ruined the most important night of my life. No hello. No explanation. Just that. I asked what she expected. She said I embarrassed her in front of people who matter, and that I made her look cheap. I stood there and listened. She accused me of being jealous, of never doing anything with my life, and of waiting for moments to sabotage her happiness. Then she said it. You've always hated that I shine brighter. That's when it snapped into place. This wasn't about the dinner. This wasn't even about the money. It was about control, about power, and about her wanting to remind me that she's the star of the family and I'm lucky to be in the credits. I asked her calmly why I wasn't invited. She smirked and said something about space being limited, how it was a more intimate crowd, and how I don't really vibe with her friends. I nodded. You mean the ones I introduced you to? She went quiet. That's when I laid it all out. Every time growing up that I got thrown under the bus so she could walk free. The lies she told. The messes I cleaned. The way Mom and Dad always bent the world around her like she was made of porcelain and the rest of us were disposable. She didn't take it well. She said I was bitter and that I was making up stories to play the victim. Then she stormed out, saying I should be ashamed. Scott didn't say a word. Not to me, not to her. He just followed her like a shadow. But later that night, I got a message from him. 3 words, I need out. This thing wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Part 3, the crack split open. I ignored Scott's message for a few hours. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew replying too soon would make this real. And it wasn't just gossip anymore. This wasn't just a family dinner gone wrong. It was bigger, deeper, the kind of thing that changes people's lives. When I finally replied, all I said was, come by. He showed up the next morning, just after 9 o'clock, with a single duffel bag over his shoulder. Same clothes he wore the night before. He looked like he hadn't slept, eyes bloodshot, face tight, like his whole body was just holding itself together out of habit. He didn't say much. I let him in. He dropped the bag by the door and sat on the edge of the couch like he was waiting for someone to tell him what to do. I'm done, he said finally. I'm leaving her. I should have done it a long time ago. I didn't respond right away. Just let him talk. He told me everything about how the fight started before they even got home. How she screamed in the car, blamed him for not stepping in, and told him he embarrassed her for not dragging me out of the restaurant like a bouncer. She said he was weak, that he'd never been a real man, and that being married to him felt like sleepwalking through life. He said she threw a wine glass at the wall when they got inside. It shattered over a photo of them from their honeymoon. She didn't even blink. Scott said he'd been thinking about leaving for over a year, and that the only reason he stayed was because of her parents, mine. The illusion that everyone around her worked hard to keep intact. That everything was fine, perfect, glossy. She drains the life out of everything, he said, even her own happiness. Then he told me something I didn't expect. The pregnancy was fake. She blurted it out on the phone to Dad while crying. A lie just to flip the script and make herself the victim. She never thought he'd question it. She was playing everyone again. I let him move into the guest room that night. I gave him a key and told him to settle in, no questions asked. He passed out before 10 o'clock and slept through the night like a dead man. I don't think he'd had a full night's sleep in years. Vanessa found out the next day. I don't know how, maybe Dad told her, maybe she was still tracking Scott's phone. But by noon, my phone was lighting up like a bomb went off. She called me a thief, a manipulator, and accused me of seducing her husband with sympathy, which was so insane I had to read it twice. Then came the voicemails. Screaming, crying, begging, threatening. She said I was trying to destroy her on purpose, that I'd been waiting for this moment, and that she was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of monster I really was. She even tried to come over. I watched her from my window as she stood outside my building for 20 minutes, yelling into her phone and pacing like a caged animal. Eventually, she left, but I knew that wouldn't be the end of it. Later that night, Mom called. She said Vanessa was inconsolable, that I was tearing the family apart and ripping a marriage to shreds. I asked her if she even knew what Vanessa had said to Scott. She didn't. Of course not. Because no one ever questioned Vanessa. They never had. I told Mom the truth. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending. The next morning, Dad left me a voicemail. It was short and cold. "If you don't send Scott back home, you're out of the business." That was it. I laughed because they didn't realize what they were walking into. They built their lives around Vanessa, her moods, her lies, her entitlement. And now that she wasn't getting what she wanted, they were losing control. So I started lining things up. The SUV I bought them last Christmas? Still under my name. The business? I handled the books, the licensing, the real ownership. And the moment they tried to corner me, I knew what to do. It was time they learned what it felt like to be left out. I didn't respond to my father's voicemail. He said if I didn't send Scott home, I was out of the business. Said I was destroying everything they built. I listened to that message while sipping coffee on my balcony, watching traffic pass below. He still didn't get it. None of them did. They hadn't built anything. They were just standing on the edge of what I built and calling it theirs. That afternoon, I called my attorney. I told him to start the process of restructuring the company. All financial access for Vanessa and my parents terminated. I didn't dissolve their names on paper, not yet. I wanted the next part to sting in real time. A few days later, I reclaimed the SUV I gave them. I hadn't signed it over, just let them use it because years ago I thought keeping the peace was worth it. I filed the repo papers. That Monday morning, while Vanessa was inside making another scene on the phone with someone, probably my mother, the car was towed straight from her driveway. 2 hours later, she called me screaming, breathless. She said I was a psycho, that the car was hers, and that I was ruining her life. I told her to check the registration and hung up. Then Mom called. She asked me what I was doing. She said, "Don't you think you're being harsh?" I asked her if she thought it was harsh when I stood outside the restaurant and watched them all laugh without me. Silence. I didn't expect them to admit anything. I knew they wouldn't, but they were losing control and they could feel it. While they spiraled, Scott adjusted quietly and efficiently. He started eating real food, getting up early, and reading again. He told me he hadn't read a book in years. Vanessa always mocked him for it, calling it wasting time when he could be fixing things around the house. Then one day, out of nowhere, he said he wanted to learn something new. Graphic design, of all things. He said he used to be decent at it in high school before Vanessa made fun of one of his flyers and he stopped. I connected him with a friend who ran a creative agency. Within days, he had a part-time gig designing social content. A week later, he had a full-time offer, $5,000 a month. No more asking permission to exist. He looked like a different person. Then came the curveball. Scott came home one night pale and shaky. He had something to tell me. "She cheated on me," he said. "And not recently. A while back. I just didn't want to see it." He found the evidence. Screenshots, messages, one with a contact saved under a fake name, Jess from spin class. But it was a guy. It was obvious once you saw it. There were hotel receipts that didn't line up with her supposed work events and a Venmo payment with a strawberry emoji and a heart. He said at first he thought it was emotional, that maybe she was just texting someone to feel important, but now he was sure she'd crossed the line. Probably more than once. Then he told me she showed up at his new office. He sent me the security footage. Vanessa standing in the lobby in a flowing maternity dress, holding her stomach like a delicate vase. She had makeup caked on and her hair done like she was about to shoot a commercial. But the receptionist wouldn't let her up. She left after 5 minutes. Later that night, she called him screaming about how he abandoned his child. He asked her to name the OBGYN. She hung up. The next day, she posted an ultrasound photo on Instagram with a caption full of inspirational hashtags. I ran a reverse image search. It was lifted from a medical blog from 2021. She wasn't just lying. She was unraveling in public. That's when Scott made it official. He filed for divorce. My parents didn't take it well. My mom called and accused me of turning Scott against the family. Dad said I was acting like some cold-blooded revenge puppet master. I told them Scott was an adult, and that all I'd done was give him the space to remember who he was. The following week, Vanessa texted Scott begging to meet just to talk. When he didn't respond, she showed up at my building again. This time, she brought their wedding album and stood outside crying for an hour. She made sure everyone saw her, but no one came to the door. That night, she messaged Scott one last time. "If I can't have you, I'll take everything from you." She didn't realize she already had, and none of it made her happy. That's when I started prepping my next move. Quietly pulling together the final threads, freezing all family stipends, reallocating assets and shifting power, because soon she'd have to face something she never had before, working for her own survival. The next phase wasn't loud. It was surgical. My parents still thought they had leverage. They believed their names on the business meant they held some kind of veto power. But names mean nothing when the bank accounts are tied to an LLC you don't control and the assets are held in a trust you didn't even know existed. I let them talk big while I quietly erased their access to everything. The statements I sent them monthly? Gone. The health insurance I covered for both of them? Cancelled. The corporate cards they used for dinners, hotels, and random shopping sprees? Shut down in one afternoon. They found out the hard way when Dad tried to book a weekend trip to Palm Springs and his card was declined. I didn't answer the call when he rang, but he texted, "What the hell are you doing?" I replied with one word, restructuring. The next day, Vanessa called Scott again. She'd found out the divorce papers had been filed. She accused him of betrayal and said he owed her one more conversation. He didn't respond. Instead, he took a short trip out of town with a girl he met through a friend at his new job. Nothing serious, just a weekend in Lake Tahoe to clear his head. While he was gone, Vanessa showed up at my office unannounced. She walked past the receptionist and into the conference room where I was meeting with my lead designer. I didn't look up. I just told her she had 2 minutes. She dropped a manila envelope on the table. Inside were photos of Scott with another woman, at a diner, walking in the park, sitting on a bench. All were taken from a distance. "You think he's innocent?" she asked. "He's trash." I didn't even open the envelope. I just said, "At least he didn't fake a pregnancy and stage a scene at someone's office lobby." She lost it. She started yelling. Security came up and had to escort her out. She slapped one of the guards across the chest on the way out. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I got a call from a mutual friend. Apparently, Vanessa went crying to my parents again. But this time, she told them something new. She said the car I took back was a gift in exchange for silence. She implied there was something shady about the business, something she could expose. It was an empty threat, but my parents believed her, or pretended to. Probably because they didn't know what else to do. That same night, Dad called me and said, "Maybe we should all sit down as a family." I said, "No." Then he tried again. "You're taking this too far." I told him I wasn't taking anything. I was just done giving. Then came the real twist. Scott came back from Tahoe and said he had something to tell me. He'd gotten a call from Vanessa's best friend, a woman named Mara, who said she needed to clear her conscience. Turns out, Vanessa had been cheating for nearly a year. And not just with one guy. But here's the real kicker. The pregnancy she faked? It wasn't faked the first time. She had actually gotten pregnant, but not by Scott. By someone else, a bartender she was seeing on the side. When she realized she couldn't pass it off, she terminated the pregnancy and pretended the whole thing never happened. Then, months later, she faked a new one with a fake ultrasound image to win Scott back. When I asked Scott how he felt about it, he didn't even flinch. "I feel free," he said. And for once, I believed him. He was finally done playing the quiet husband. He had a job, a new apartment he was about to move into, and a sense of self he hadn't felt in years. And then he asked something that caught me off guard. "You think I can stay here just a little longer? Just until I sign the lease?" I told him he could stay as long as he needed. And as Vanessa's world started to crumble, his was finally starting to take shape. She'd taken everything from him, but now she had nothing left, and he was just getting started. The divorce went through fast. Scott pushed it through with a lawyer I recommended. Someone who didn't flinch, didn't take calls from Vanessa's representatives, and knew how to navigate high-drama, low-substance opponents like her. She fought back for a few weeks, sent emotionally loaded emails and fake medical notes, and even tried to claim emotional damages. But once she realized Scott had receipts, messages, the fake pregnancy lie, her confession to Mara, she folded. She tried to make a final play in court and claimed half of his income. The judge asked for her job. She didn't have one. She claimed she'd been emotionally supporting him through his career. The judge asked when she last worked. She didn't remember. It was over in 10 minutes. She walked away with nothing. Not the SUV, not alimony, not the apartment. Just her last name and a pile of unpaid credit cards. Scott walked away with everything he'd come into the marriage with, which, granted, wasn't much. But now he had something bigger, direction. A job that appreciated him, a team that liked having him around, and for the first time in his adult life, no one telling him who to be. He moved into his own place a few weeks later, a small but bright studio downtown. 2 months into the new job, his boss bumped his pay to $6,500 a month. He bought his own car, joined a gym, and even started dating someone new, a graphic designer from his agency. They were quiet about it. Nothing flashy, just 2 people going on walks and cooking on weekends. Vanessa found out about the girlfriend and posted a story with a quote about betrayal from those closest to you. No one cared. She still lived with our parents, who now had to sell their rental condo just to stay afloat. Mom asked me for a raise and their monthly support. I told her there wasn't any support left. Dad came into the office one day without an appointment. He said, "We need to talk about restoring things." I said there was nothing left to restore. Then, 2 weeks after the divorce, the last card fell. Scott got a call from Mara. She was crying. She just learned something she thought he should know. Vanessa was pregnant again. But the father wasn't Scott. Wasn't even the bartender. It was some married guy she'd been seeing on the side for months. And this time, it wasn't a lie. She'd already posted cryptic, black and white sonograms to Instagram looking for sympathy. Scott just stared at the message and said, "It doesn't matter." He meant it. It didn't matter. It wasn't his life anymore. He visited last weekend. We grilled steaks, drank beer, and laughed. He told me he was thinking of moving to Portland with his girlfriend, who got offered a job at a design firm up there. He asked if I thought he should go. I told him he should have left a long time ago. As for me, I don't hear from Vanessa anymore. She still tries to message Scott, but he doesn't respond. My parents, humbled and bitter, have gone mostly quiet. We speak occasionally, but not about anything real. There's a space between us now, a truth no one wants to touch. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My dad sold the house I inherited and said the money will go to pay off your brother's vacation. I laughed, and a week later, when my lawyer called him, I honestly thought my father was joking when he said that money will go to your brother's vacation after selling the house I inherited. I even laughed, but a week later, when my lawyer called him, the laughter was gone. That house meant everything to me. It wasn't just some property in Grandma's will. It was where I spent most of my childhood, where I felt safe when things got bad with my parents. Grandma was the only one in the family who really cared about me. She practically raised me while my parents were too busy with their own lives and too focused on my younger brother, Adam. She was the one who showed up for me. She made me feel like I mattered, and when she died, she left me her house. I wasn't surprised. My parents rarely visited her. They never lifted a finger to help when she was sick. Adam, her golden child, never cared either. He was too busy doing nothing. 24 years old, still living at home, unemployed, yet somehow full of potential in my father's eyes. I had long accepted that I was the forgotten son, the one who had to make it on his own, but I never thought it would come to this. One afternoon, I decided to stop by the house just to check on it. I hadn't moved in yet. I had my own place, but I liked knowing it was there waiting for me. But as I pulled into the driveway, something was wrong. There were cars out front. Not mine, not Grandma's, someone else's. I walked up the steps and rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, a man in his late 30s answered the door with a woman standing behind him. They looked confused. "Can I help you?" the man asked. I frowned. "Yes, this is my house. Who are you?" The woman let out a small, nervous laugh. We bought this house last month from the owner. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You what? The man crossed his arms. We bought it fair and square. What's the problem? My mouth went dry. I stared at them, at their cars, at the porch that wasn't mine anymore, and I could barely process it. I pulled out my phone, checked my emails, my texts, nothing. No alerts, no notifications of a sale. But I already knew what had happened. I didn't say another word to them. I just turned around, got in my car, and drove straight to my parents' house. Adam was the only one home, sprawled out on the couch scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up as I walked in. "What's up?" he muttered. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Where's Mom and Dad?" He shrugged. "Out." "Why?" I clenched my fists. "Because they sold my house." Adam blinked. "Oh, that." He nodded as if it were just a casual piece of information. "Yeah, they'll be back soon." Then he went back to scrolling. I stood there for a whole minute, staring at him. He didn't care. Not at all. So I waited. When my parents finally walked through the door, I didn't even let them sit down. "What the hell did you do?" My father sighed as if I was the one being difficult. "Look, Hubert, it was unfair that you got the house. Your mother and I had other plans." "Plans?" I repeated. "So you forged documents and sold my house?" "Adam needed a vacation," my father continued, completely unfazed. "He's been stressed and he needs a car. He's the one with potential, Hubert." I almost laughed again, but this time it wasn't funny. I shook my head. "I'm not letting this go." Then I turned and walked out the door, because my dad had no idea what was coming next. I barely remember driving home. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I could still hear my father's voice in my head, calm and dismissive, like he hadn't just stolen from me, like it was no big deal. Adam needed a vacation. Couldn't wrap my head around it. He needed a vacation? He needed a car? Meanwhile, my grandmother's house, the only real home I ever had, was gone. I parked in front of my apartment and sat there for a while trying to think. I wasn't going to let this go, but I wasn't going to rush in without a plan. My father was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. If he was going to pull this off, he had to cover his tracks. So I called my friend Daniel. Daniel was a lawyer, and he wasn't just good at his job, he was ruthless. If there was even a hint of fraud in the sale, he'd find it. I explained everything over the phone, and by the time I was done, he was pissed. "Meet me at my office tomorrow," he said. "Bring everything you have. Emails, documents, texts. I don't care if it's a birthday card from your grandmother. If it mentions the house, I want it." I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying everything. Grandma's voice, my father's smirk, Adam's indifference. And underneath it all, a single thought. They think they've won. They had no idea what was about to happen. The next morning, I met Daniel in his office. I handed him every document I had. My grandmother's will, bank statements, even old text messages in which she talked about how much she wanted me to have the house. He studied them for a while, then leaned back in his chair. "Your dad's an idiot," he finally said. I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because he didn't just commit fraud. He left a paper trail." Daniel turned his monitor over and showed me something I wasn't expecting. A forged signature. My signature. I leaned closer. "Wait, this isn't mine." "No," Daniel muttered. "Your father forged your consent to the sale. And get this, he used a notary who's already been investigated for shady dealings. This is bad for him. Really bad." I exhaled slowly. "So, what's the move?" Daniel cracked his knuckles. "First, we hit them with a formal demand. Give them a chance to pay back the money before we take them to court. But considering what you told me about your father, I doubt he'll cooperate." "Not a chance," I said. "Then we sue. And if he can't pay, we go after his assets. His house, his savings, everything." I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Satisfaction. "Let's do it." A week later, Daniel sent my father the formal demand. He had 48 hours to return the $200,000 from the sale or we would take legal action. The next day, my phone rang. It was my father. For a second, I almost didn't answer it, Then I thought, no, let's see what he has to say now. I picked it up. Hubert. My father's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something I hadn't heard before. Panic. I got a letter from a lawyer. He said, "You're being ridiculous." I remained silent, letting him ramble. "This is a family matter. You don't take the family to court. You don't ruin your father's life for money." I finally spoke. "You didn't just take money. You stole from me. You forged my signature. That's fraud. You're looking at jail time." There was a long pause, then he sighed. "Listen, I'll give you back some of the money. Not all of it, but—" I laughed. "You can't negotiate." "I'll talk to Adam," he pressed. "Maybe we can work something out." I froze at the mention of Adam. Then suddenly, something clicked. I never told him I knew about the scam, not directly. I never mentioned the forged signature, the crooked notary, none of it. I just said he stole from me, which meant he already knew he got caught and he knew why. And if he knew about the forgery, that meant Adam probably knew too. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Did Adam know about this? My father hesitated too long. Then he hung up. And suddenly, I realized, this wasn't just my father's betrayal. It was Adam's too. I stared at my phone, my father's name still on the screen. He had hung up the second I mentioned Adam. That told me all I needed to know. Adam wasn't just some clueless bystander in all of this. He knew. Maybe he had known all along. And suddenly his reaction that day, the way he barely blinked when I told him our parents had sold my house, made perfect sense. This wasn't just my father's betrayal. It was his too, and I needed to hear him admit it. That night, I drove back to my parents' house. My mother opened the door and looked surprised. "Hubert, what are you doing here?" I ignored her and went inside. Adam was right where I expected him, on the couch, scrolling through his phone, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. I stood in front of him. "How long have you known?" Adam barely looked up. "Known what?" I clenched my fists. "That Dad forged my signature. That got his attention." His fingers twitched and his eyes flicked to mine. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Liar." I took a step closer. "Don't play dumb. I know you knew. I just want to hear you say it." My mother sighed. "Hubert, stop it. We're a family." I cut her off. "Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't steal from each other." Adam's expression wavered. He opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled sharply. "All right, fine. Yeah, I knew." My stomach tightened, but my face remained blank. "For how long?" He looked away. "Dad told me before he sold it. He said it wasn't a big deal, that you already had your own place and that you needed a vacation more than I needed my own inheritance." Adam frowned. "I didn't take the money." "Oh, really?" I crossed my arms. "So who booked the trip to the Maldives?" Silence. I shook my head. "And the car Dad wanted to buy you?" Adam's face turned red. "I didn't ask him to. He just—" I scoffed. "Oh, right. You just conveniently accepted the vacation and the car, but had no idea where the money came from." Adam looked away. "It's not like you needed the house anyway." I actually laughed. "Not like I needed it?" "It wasn't about need, Adam. It was mine. Grandma left it to me. But you and Dad decided that didn't matter because you wanted something instead." I turned toward the door. "I'm done here." Adam jumped off the couch. "Wait. What are you going to do?" I looked over my shoulder at him. "You'll see." Then I walked out. That night I called Daniel. "We don't just want the money back," I told him. "I want everything we can take. If they can't pay, I want their house. I want their life savings. I want my father on trial for fraud. We will go all the way." Daniel didn't even hesitate. "Let's do it." My father and Adam thought this was just about a house. They had no idea they had just burned their own lives to the ground. The moment my father was served with the lawsuit, the calls began. At first, he was furious. "You're being ridiculous, Hubert. This is a family business. You don't take your own father to court." Then he tried guilt. "I did what I thought was right. Adam needed help. You're really going to send me to jail for a house?" Finally, he tried bargaining. "Fine. I'll give you back some of the money. Not all of it, but I cut him off. You can't negotiate. He tried one last time, his voice lower, almost desperate. You'd really do this to me? You did it to yourself, I said. Then I hung up. The process went quickly, faster than I had expected. Daniel wasn't just good. He was relentless. Every time my father's lawyer tried to delay or make pointless motions, Daniel shut them down immediately. He was ready for anything. And Adam? He never called, never texted, didn't even show up at my apartment. He was silent. I had the feeling he was waiting to see if Dad would come out of this, waiting to see if he'd have to choose a side. Then came the trial. My father sat at the defendant's table wearing a suit that looked too big on him, his face tense with stress. He wasn't the confident, arrogant man I grew up with. He looked small. I was the first to take the stand. I told the jury about my grandmother, how much she meant to me, how she raised me when my parents didn't care. I told them how she left me the house in her will, how I found out it had been sold when I showed up one day and found strangers living there. Then Daniel laid out the hard evidence. My grandmother's will proving that the house was legally mine, the forged signature on the sale papers, the corrupt notary who had signed it, a guy already under investigation for fraud, bank statements showing where the money from the sale went, Adam's vacation in the Maldives, a down payment on the car my father wanted to buy him. It was an open and shut case. But my father's lawyer kept trying. He painted me as an ungrateful son, said I was blowing a family misunderstanding out of proportion, that my father was only doing what was best for the family, that I was tearing us apart for money. The jury didn't buy it. The judge didn't buy it. And when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, I saw my father's face fall in real fear. The sentencing came a few weeks later, 5 years in prison. The moment the judge said it, my mother let out a choked sob. Adam just sat there, his face pale. My father turned in his seat and looked at me. His eyes were filled with pure hatred, but I didn't flinch. I had nothing more to say to him. Outside the courthouse, my mother caught up with me. How could you do this? She snapped, her voice shaking with anger. I turned to face her. How could I? He stole from me. He forged my signature. That's a crime, Mom. Her face twisted. He's your father. I almost laughed. Did that matter when he was cheating me? She shook her head. You're not my son anymore. And for a second, just a second, it stung. Then I realized she was never really my mother to begin with. All she ever cared about was Adam. Speaking of Adam, he came up next. He didn't look angry, just tired. Are you happy now? He murmured. I raised an eyebrow. You got a free vacation with stolen money. Why don't you tell me? Adam didn't say anything. I sighed. You knew. You knew all along. Adam looked away. It wasn't my idea. It doesn't matter, I said. You took the lead anyway. You still let it happen. Adam took a long breath. Well, congrats, man. You won. No, I said. I took back what was mine. Adam didn't answer. He just shook his head and walked away. And that was the last time we ever spoke. A month later, my dad went to jail. My mother and Adam had to move out of their house, the house I was suing for. They stayed with my Aunt Linda for a while, but even she got tired of them. Finally, they had no choice but to move into a tiny rented apartment. I used the money I won in the lawsuit to buy back my grandmother's house. The house they had stolen from me was mine again. I stepped inside for the first time in months and ran my fingers over the familiar walls. Felt right. And though my mother and Adam would never forgive me, I didn't care. They made their choices and I made mine. After the trial, my mother and Adam didn't just hate me. They made sure everyone knew it. They cut off all contact. But that didn't stop them from spreading their version of the story. My mother called every relative she could, painting me as the villainous son who threw his own father in prison and left his family homeless. She destroyed my name. I told Daniel when he updated me about the final settlement. She tried, he corrected. But it didn't work, did it? And he was right, because no one was buying it. At first, some of our extended family were shocked. A few aunts and uncles reached out, hesitant, trying to piece together what really happened. Hubert, did you really put your dad in prison? one of my cousins asked. I was blunt. He forged my signature, stole my house, and used the money for Adam's vacation. What was I supposed to do? Let it go. Silence. Then she sighed. Yeah, no. I wouldn't have let that go either. And that's when things shifted. Because everyone loved Grandma. And the more they thought about it, the angrier they got. Not at me, but at my parents. Because this wasn't just about me. This was about what they did to Grandma's memory. She left that house to me because she wanted me to have it, and instead of respecting that, my father threw it away like it meant nothing. That didn't sit right with anyone. Meanwhile, my mother and Adam were dealing with their own problems. Without my father's income, they couldn't afford their mortgage. The court had already seized my father's assets, and after the settlement, there wasn't much left. They had no choice but to move in with my Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda was kind, the kind of person who would never let family go homeless even if she didn't agree with them. But she didn't support them. She made that very clear. She told them straight up, I'm letting you stay here because I have a heart, but don't expect me to defend what you did. My mother was furious. You're taking his side? Aunt Linda didn't back down. I'm taking Grandma's side. That shut my mother up real quick. A few months later, they finally moved into a small rented apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a 2-bedroom place in an older part of town. A huge downgrade from the house they once had. And Adam? He finally had to grow up. No more vacations, no new car. Just the reality of being a 25-year-old man with no job, no degree, and no one to clean up his messes anymore. I don't know if he ever blamed my father for putting him in that situation, but I do know that he never blamed himself. As for me, I moved into Grandma's house. The first night I slept there, it felt right. I sat in the living room running my fingers over the old wooden coffee table. It still had the scratches from when I was a kid playing with my toy cars. I could almost hear Grandma's voice, soft, warm, telling me stories before bed. I won. Not just the lawsuit, not just the trial. I took back what was stolen. And even though my mother and Adam would never forgive me, I didn't care. Because deep down, I knew Grandma would have been proud. And that was all that mattered. It's been a year since everything went down. My father has been in prison for a while now. My mother and Adam are still living in that tiny apartment, and I've been settling into Grandma's house. I didn't expect to hear from any of them again, but then a few weeks ago, I got a call from my mother. At first, I thought she dialed me by accident. But when I answered, she sighed and said, Your father wants to see you. Apparently, he had been asking her for months to reach out to me, but she refused until now. I don't know why she finally gave in. Maybe she was tired of hearing it. Maybe she thought I'd say no and she just wanted to prove a point. But I agreed. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted to fix anything. I just wanted to hear what he had to say. Visiting him was weird. I expected him to be angry, bitter, the way he was in court. But he looked tired, older, like the weight of everything had finally caught up to him. The first thing he said when he sat down across from me was, I messed up. And then, for the first time in my life, my father apologized. Not just some half-hearted, I'm sorry you felt that way kind of thing, a real apology. He admitted everything. How selfish he was, how he shouldn't have taken the house, how he let his favoritism toward Adam blind him. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said. But I was just being a fool. I sat there for a long time just letting him talk. And in the end, when he finally asked, Can you forgive me? I did. Not for him, but for me. Because holding on to that anger was exhausting. And whether I forgave him or not, it wouldn't change what happened. It wouldn't bring back the time lost or fix my relationship with my mother and brother. But at least this way, I didn't have to carry that weight anymore. I told him, I forgive you. But that doesn't mean we can go back to how things were. He nodded like he already knew that. After that, I left. I haven't visited him again, and I don't know if I will. As for my mother and Adam, nothing has changed. My mother still refuses to speak to me, and honestly, I don't care to fix it. Adam acts like I don't exist, which is fine by me. Some relationships aren't meant to be repaired. But at least I got back what truly mattered. And that's enough. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.